Good morning and welcome to AM Prime on WESN. I'm Naomi McNish, and I'm a Lone Ranger this morning, but that's okay. So this morning we are tackling a topic that it's a developmental topic, in the nation's healthcare landscape. As Trinidad and Tobago, we currently have the worst pass rate in the Caribbean for the regional examination for nurses registration. So we are going to unpack that a little bit more with Mr. Eddie Stewart. He has been vocal about what's contributing to this crisis, from the withdrawal of student stipends, the lack of accommodation, and outdated policies, to the pressures of driving nurses abroad. Good morning, Mr. Stewart. Welcome to the program.
Pleasant morning to you and your listeners. Thanks for having me.
Of course. How are you this morning?
Not too bad on this rainy Friday morning.
Oh gosh,
I'm
yes.
doing well.
It was very, very rainy this morning. So, Mr. Stewart, can you explain, just how serious this 50% failure rate is, and what it means for the future of healthcare in Trinidad and Tobago?
Yes. Well, even before we tackle the 50% pass rate, one has to understand that we are already hemorrhaging a number of our best and brightest nurses to foreign countries.
Right.
And that is really having a debilitating effect within the healthcare setting. We are struggling to arrive at a patient-to-staff ratio that can safely operate and safely provide the necessary care for our loved patients. So we're already short. And then to further compromise, we are short on our specialist nursing personnel, which is even more of a concern for the association. How do we address that shortfall? We address it by trying to retain our nurses, and hopefully at some point the government will see it fit to increase the remuneration for nursing personnel who continue to work on 2013 salaries. You also try to improve the environment. If there's one thing the government has been doing is building a number of buildings, so the environment in which nurses are working is improving over the years. But we are unable to attract and retain those nursing personnel who get into the profession. In terms of attraction, there are 3 nursing schools persons can go to. And yes, most of them are oversubscribed into attracting those persons fresh out of school with the required qualification, 5 CXC level passes, inclusive of a maths and English and a science subject. Okay, they are coming into the schools. However, in the school system, which is now a 4-year bachelor's degree, because that is the standard internationally, we are seeing an unusual high failure rate. It is very unusual in terms of the regional and international. Generally, the pass rate, regional and international, is hovering around 85–90% pass rate. But in Trinidad and Tobago, unfortunately, it has a woeful 50%. And it has been going down over the years, actually. So it is not improving, it is actually getting worse. And there are a myriad of reasons for this.
But going back a little bit, what is the current patient-to-staff ratio?
It varies internationally, so I'll just give you what international best practice is and what the evidence has demonstrated. Anytime you go above this patient-to-staff ratio, then the patient life is at risk. Any additional patient we add on. So for instance, ICU is 1-to-1, 1 nurse to 1 patient, 1 registered nurse to 1 patient. HDU, high dependency unit. So that is a step down from ICU. That is 1 nurse to 2 patients. The general medical and surgical wards, where the most of our population are placed in, that is generally around 1 nurse to 4 patients or 5. In Trinidad and Tobago, you could have a situation where in a general ward, you could end up with 1 nurse to 10 patients, 12 patients, 20 patients. So there's, in Trinidad and Tobago, because there's no standard, because there's no barometer to be held against, you can open a new hospital and just say, okay, we're going to staff it, send a few nurses there, and expect them to run that hospital.
Yeah, what challenges arise when staff are responsible for too many patients at once?
That arises when a staff is required to attempt to see about. You can place the best nurse that exists in the world, and you place them in environments where they have to take care of 12 patients. 1 of those patients is going to die, 1 or more of those patients, because you don't, when it's supposed to be 1 to 5 or 1 to 4, and you add a 6th patient and a 7th patient and an 8th patient, it is not only those additional patients' care that is being compromised, it is also the original 4 patients you're supposed to have. So all 10 patients' lives are now at risk. And it has been demonstrated errors are more prone when you place the nurse and the patient in that environment. You suffer from more burnout. The patient cannot get that level of one-on-one care that they otherwise would have received in the normal setting.
Yeah.
And internationally, this has been recognized. And that is why you have states mandating that you follow these strict patient-to-staff ratios. So, and that is why America and England and Canada and Saudi Arabia are coming down for our nurses, because they have to maintain proper staff-to-patient ratio. So
coming back to the issue with the pass rate being, at 50%. What are some of the possible reasons behind, that performance, compared to other Caribbean countries for the exam?
Yes. Dominica, just to give an analogy, Dominica has 100% pass rate.
Wow.
So everybody who enters graduates successfully at their first attempt. Just recently, it came out. And a few other countries have been able to hit high 90s and at points 100%. And when we compare and contrast what is happening across the territories, one of the things we realize, because we are so short of nurses and because there is an attempt to fill the gap, we are unfortunately not equipping the nursing schools enough to be able to achieve those targets. And therefore you end up with extremely large classes, 30 plus students in a class, and there are about 3-4 batches, and you don't have the required number of lecturers and clinical instructors. So the lecturers will remain in the classroom and teach the students, and the clinical instructors are the ones to be able to monitor them in the hospitals and ensure they learn the correct procedures.
Yes.
Because again, unfortunately, we don't have enough nursing personnel to be able to guide these students when they're out on the wards. So they must have clinical instructors provided by the school to make sure they are properly supervised and they learn the correct procedures.
Yes.
So that is a major shortfall, and one of the greatest shortfall the students suffer with. In addition, there are a number of other issues. Nursing students don't enjoy stipend like they used to. In my time, every nursing student would have enjoyed a stipend, very small, $1,000, $1,200, $1,400. But it went a long way. You didn't have to worry about feeding yourself. At least you had this $1,600 to carry through the month. You could have used it to supplement the purchasing of books. Could have used it to supplement purchasing of uniforms, traveling to and from the institutions. So that is a major shortcoming now, because that has since been removed from one of the nursing schools and it has never been given to another of the nursing schools. Currently, there are 3 nursing schools. Costat, they currently receive a stipend, but the other 2 nursing schools, UE Nursing School and USC Nursing School, do not enjoy that stipend.
Right.
There are other factors, hostels.
Yeah.
In my means, every nurse had the ability to stay within a hostel. In fact, doctors still enjoy the opportunities to remain in the hospital setting in these hostel rooms. Nursing don't have that. They actually have knocked down all of these hostels and made car parks of them, unfortunately, both in Port of Spain and South and Eastern. So we are short there also.
So can you walk us through how these changes or the lack of these stipends and the hostels have impacted the students' performance?
Well, one can witness now, nursing and medicine, and probably some other professions, but nursing and medicine, you ought not to be working a full-time job and trying to complete these courses. In fact, during my time, even though we had a pass rate of, say, 95% pass rate during my time, generally majority of persons passed, the 1 or 2 persons who failed were the ones who had a sideline job. And it distracted them from their primary purpose, which is studying and passing the exams and retaining the information. So from the minute, what we are seeing is the majority of nursing students now, and it could be for a variety of reasons, in addition to not having stipend, in addition to their parents probably not being financially equipped to sustain them during their 4 year of study, they are required to work within these sectors, and they are working for a number of the food establishments, a number of gas stations we have nursing personnel working with. And so they cannot focus to retain the vast amount of information that one is required to become a nurse. So it is really proving difficult. And in addition, besides the stipend, since you're not staying on campus, as it will, like you would stay on campus if you go UE, like police, fire, army, they stay on base. They get almost a salary. They don't have to, they get food, lunch, breakfast, everything when they're on base. Nursing personnel don't have that luxury. So you have to go out and work like any other person and try to manage one of the heaviest work studies that one can undertake. So it's really playing an enormous toll, and we are witnessing it from the exam results.
Yeah. Do you think the structure of the nursing program, particularly the balance between academics and clinical training, affects the pass rate as well?
Yes, it is something that I would have listened to the Minister of Health and also the Minister for Tertiary Education, Dr. Prakash Prasad, indicating they're going to analyze the data. They are going to do their own research to identify what is the main causes. But it's not going to be one cause, it's going to be multifactorial. And they would definitely include those areas I would have mentioned this morning.
Yeah,
and
right.
Including what you would have indicated there, that work-life balance, and that balance between retaining theory and putting it into practice on the wards, Because even at the ward level, because there are two sets of exams. There's the practical exam where you have to demonstrate proficiency on the wards to your examiner, and then there's the written exam. So our practical exams, while it's better, it's still not as it used to be. It's around 75% pass rate for the practical exam, but for the written exam, it is at 50%. So we are having difficulties on both ends of the spectrum. Yeah.
Yeah. So again, I want to get your opinion on this. You know, do you believe that there has been a deprioritization of nursing education compared to other healthcare training like medicine, you know, in Trinidad and Tobago specifically by the government?
We suffered in Trinidad and Tobago because we did not have someone driving, someone leading policies to really correct the shortfalls and the surpluses within the healthcare setting. So what I mean by that, currently we have a surplus of doctors. We do not need to be training so many doctors, but one can understand it's still a task to try to get into med school. So I don't envision the government indicating that they will reduce the number of doctors being trained. Mm-hmm. We have a shortage of nursing personnel. So some of that resources can be redirected towards nursing to ensure we ramp up of nursing. So we hope the government finds the necessary resources to ramp up nursing education in Trinidad and Tobago. We have a shortage of specialist nurses and specialist doctors. So I hope the government can redirect resources to these areas. We have an oversupply of dentists, pharmacists, so much so they cannot find employment, and oversupply of vets. So there needs to be a realignment of what the country needs as opposed to what persons want to do when they get out of school. Yeah. And we just continue funding persons to do courses which we know they can't get employment for, and at the same time suffer tremendously because we are short in other key areas. Yeah, so I mean, so then on that, you know, you would have mentioned that nurses are migrating for better opportunities, and you know, is this nurses who are already registered, or would this be nurses, well, persons who are studying nursing? Yeah. Well, it will be nurses who are already registered. Right. So then, you know, how much of a threat is that to our healthcare system? Well, it's going to further compromise the quality of care that the public receives. Just give a comparison. When I was training some 20 years ago, the senior nurses on the ward had something like 25 years of experience, 30 years of experience, and you could have relied on them comprehensively for guidance. You could have witnessed best practice and all of these things. Now, the senior nurses on the ward have about 5-6 years of experience. They are now the seniors because those persons who are above them have already left our shores and working for the US dollar and the pounds and what have you. So you can understand immediately the difficulty when our student nurses go on the ward. They don't have that years of experience from a senior nurse that I would have enjoyed and my colleagues would have enjoyed in my time. Mm-hmm. And again, when these things happen, that is when you end up with a shortage of nursing personnel will ultimately lead to increases in the mortality rate, deaths occurring, unnecessarily deaths, and mortality rates increasing. So persons will end up getting with IV burns, they will get more falls within this setting, you'll end up with pressure ulcers, you'll end up with incorrect medication being given. So this is when all of the problems begin to arise, when you do not have the required number of nursing and midwifery personnel to take care of patients. Yeah. And we always say the hospital could run without any other category of staff for 24 hours. Any other category of staff could strike, could stay away for 24 hours. And nursing personnel could man the fort and keep those patients alive. But the patients cannot survive 24 hours with the nurses removing themselves from the workplace. Patients would not survive. So that is the level. Yes, all workers in the healthcare setting is essential, but nursing personnel are even more essential in the interest of the patient's welfare.
Yeah. With regard to the stipend and possibly reinstating stipends for nursing students, do you believe that this is something that's being taken seriously? I know that, well, now that there's a new government in place, have you heard anything, or are there discussions being had currently about it?
Well, we have been lobbying for that nursing stipend to be in place for the last 8 years. We have been lobbying the then government. And in the run-up to elections, we were able to have a meeting with the then Prime Minister, Stuart Young, who agreed finally to implement the nursing stipend. And he said it's going to be government policy going forward. All nursing schools would enjoy that equity and receive the nursing stipend. Elections would have been held and new government is in place. So we hope the current government continues and see the value in ensuring all nursing students receive stipends. So that is our hope. Thankfully, we have Minister of Health currently, Dr. Lakram Bodo, who is fully apprised of all of the issues nursing and midwifery personnel would have faced, because he was the one we went to during the last 8 years. He was one of the ones, and we provided all of the information, all of the statistics. So he's fully appraised over the years of the challenges nursing and midwifery would have faced, and he would have championed these issues in Parliament. So it would be difficult for us to even imagine that he would not implement some of the things he once championed as a shadow minister within the opposition. Yeah. It would be shudder to think that. But thankfully, we also have a meeting carded with the Minister of Health, so we will know conclusively. This Monday coming, we have a meeting with the Minister of Health, so we look forward to him confirming that the policy taken by the outgoing government would be continued under this government. Yeah,
well, I do wish you all the best with that meeting, and I hope it ends well.
Yes.
But so I want to talk about, mentorship from senior nurses to the younger ones. In your view, how important is that mentorship, and how can it be better structured to, support the struggling students or the younger students in the nursing program?
It is key. It is key. It is fundamental to any profession. And just to give you an example, with law, you would have to be mentored by someone your senior. You cannot come out with your law degree and having gone through Hewarding or whatnot and just start practicing law. You would normally go into someone else's chambers and be mentored and supervised for your first 3, 4, 5 years, because it is almost as if the learning has now started when you graduate. Even in medicine, those doctors that are passing out from med school, they are required to go through a 1-year internship process where they are supervised And actually, under the last government, not under the last government, under the UNC government, where Dr. Fuad Khan was Minister of Health, he actually saw the need for that mentorship to be so critical that he wanted to extend the internship period from 1 year to 2 years, because he realized even after 1 year, the competency level was not yet there and the person needed more. So it was briefly changed, but then it was quickly changed back because the doctors weren't in favor. They found that they can't work on the internship salaries for 2 years. So I guess they protested and it was reverted back to the 1 year. But it's key. A nurse coming out of nursing school is considered a novice nurse. And you now are required to really be placed in an environment, because now you are responsible for someone's life. Any error that you make could have severe repercussions for that patient.
Yeah. Yeah. So, Mr. Stewart, as we begin to wrap up, you know, what would you say to a young person considering a career in nursing here in Trinidad and Tobago, you know, given the challenges?
It's still one of the greatest professions to be involved in, so I would definitely encourage young persons in this market where there's a lot of unemployment, a lot of persons doing degrees that you are not assured of a job. Those things do not happen in nursing. You're always assured of a job. Whether it's locally or internationally, you are assured of a job. So we definitely would want to encourage, and we want the government to encourage the government to focus on nurses. We can be a home for nursing export. And it will definitely help the country, because when nurses go abroad, they send back foreign exchange to their loved ones. And it could be as a means of foreign exchange. And when you go to Jamaica, a lot of Jamaica economy is propped up from these remittances. A number of African countries get a lot of foreign exchange. Philippines now train nurses for export. So they train surplus nurses for export. India trains nurses for export. So this is a good opportunity for Trinidad and Tobago, because countries, these developed countries, cannot sustain the requirements for in terms of the number of nurses and personnel they need, and we can fill those gaps for them and make it beneficial to our own country at the same time. So it's definitely encourage anyone to join.
Finally, is there anything that the public can do to support our nurses and possibly advocate for, you know, a stronger, more resilient healthcare system here in the country?
Yes, and it's so apt that you have asked that question during Nurses Week. We just celebrated Nurses Day, and we normally celebrate the entire week. And it's a good opportunity when you interact with nurses, you know, to give them that, those nurses who are performing well, and you see they are performing well and going beyond the call of duty, to give them that mode of encouragement. Persons, yes, we know persons would complain when they suffer a bad interaction with one or two nurses and then label the entire profession. But the majority of nursing personnel are doing human service, and we really would want them to encourage and lobby with us, the government, to ensure that they invest in nursing and midwifery personnel. So because at some point, all of us would have to be in our nation hospital, and we want the best care possible.
Yes, I must say, I mean, most of the interactions that I've had with our nurses were positive, and I do give a lot of respect to our nurses. They work hard, and I've never, well, that I can remember even that it was so bad that I, you know, held it, but I've always had positive interactions with our nurses. So I agree, and I do wish you all the best moving forward, that the nursing program, you know, the pass rate increases and the stipends and the hostels and all these things come back into play for the development of our nurses.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for joining me on the program this morning, Mr. Stewart.
Thank you so much. Take care.
Bye-bye. All right, so as Mr. Stewart said, we definitely do need to encourage our nurses and support them and just be nice, because we need nurses. We can't have a healthcare system without the nurses. They do a lot of the work in taking care of patients. So let's advocate for that. We are going to take a quick break now, and when we come back, we're going to continue on with another conversation. This one is targeting mental health. As May is Mental Health Awareness Month, so we are going to spend a little time on that. So stay with me, and I'll be right back.
Low energy? Heart concerns? Migraines slowing you down? It's time to take control of your health. Join Wellness Unlocked, the series that brings expert advice and real solutions for a healthier you. In our latest episode, learn how Jameson CoQ10 can help support heart health, boost energy, and even reduce migraines. Get the science, the stories, and the steps to power up your health with CoQ10. Don't miss Wellness Unlocked. Watch now on WESN and start your wellness journey today.
Maybe he landed here totally by coincidence. But if by chance he's admiring your fresh coat of Benjamin Moore soft sky blue, well, that's a pretty high compliment. Coming from an expert.
Do you need treatment for obesity or any related abdominal procedures? The community hospital now offers minimally invasive laparoscopic surgery done by an American-trained, board-certified surgeon with over 20 years' experience.
Give us a call at 235-5479
for more information.
The Community Hospital of Seventh-day Adventist,
where good private health care is affordable.
Money is something we all deal with, but how many of us truly understand it? What if you could make better decisions with your money? Decisions that secure your future, protect your family, and bring you peace of mind. I'm Darren Jacobs, and I'm here to help you make sense of your dollars. Welcome to Dollars and Cents, the show that breaks down the financial world in ways that matter to you. No jargon, no confusion, just real conversations about money, your money. So join me every Wednesday at 10 a.m. on WESN for Dollars and Cents.
You are watching Strictly Legal on WESN Content Capital. Just give an overview of what exactly is that split arrangement.
Nah, you don't need to register nothing. We can do that another time. But then it becomes a hit, and then everybody starts to want to claim.
The laws that predate many of the independent countries' constitutions are going to be those colonial laws.
We know there are an infinite amount of circumstances that would lead to a murder.
I have a great idea and I have a great concept, but until it's actually expressed, it does not become intellectual property.
Accomplishments or targets of a forensic accountant is to quantify what may have been lost.
We believe we defend criminals and we manipulated the law and they're exploiting the system.
A responsible journalist will reach out to the person who they have the information on for a comment.
All right, good morning and welcome back to AM Prime on WESN. So a little bit before, you would have seen a segment about the shortage of nurses here in Trinidad and Tobago that my co-host Naomi would have done with Mr. Edie Stewart. So I would encourage you to stay tuned to WSN as we have our very own Dr. Kokaram of What's Up Doc, who will be talking about this specific topic on her show all week. So if you're interested to hear more about this conversation, if you have a vested interest in a topic like this, make sure to stay tuned to WESN as you wouldn't want to miss what she'll be talking about. So, all right, today is Wednesday, which means it is Wild Wednesdays, right? That's happening right here on AM Prime. I'm playing around with a tagline, and I hope that you guys would like it. You let me know in the comments. Where the jungle meets the studio. I don't know if y'all like that. I hope y'all like that. All right, so again, it is Wild Wednesdays. All right, again, Wild Wednesdays. Every week we dive into the fascinating world of wildlife with none other than our resident wildlife specialist, Mr. Ricardo Mead of the El Socorro Center for Wildlife Conservation. He is also joined by one of his volunteers, Miss Donna Karim. How are you doing this morning?
Good morning, and thanks for having us yet again.
Of course, it's always a pleasure to have you inside on WESN. So, of course, I'm pretty sure the camera is picking up the animal that we have here today, but I want you to do a formal introduction. Donna, would you like to do a formal introduction?
Sure. So here we have today our center's superstar. He's the star of the show. He brought the center a lot of attention recently. This is an American black vulture, and his name is Chase.
Hi, Chase. You know, Chase is looking, I don't know why he's looking like, I don't want to be here. He looks so shy. Is he shy?
No, actually now it's actually his sleep time still. He would still be home sleeping. He's a late sleeper. He sleeps in.
Oh, Chase. All right, so an American black vulture. What can you tell me about American black vultures in general?
Well, so a lot of people, Trinis I would say, you know, they would see this bird and they would not call it by its proper name. They would call it, well, you know what they would call it? A kobo, right? And that's the number one mistake because this bird, you know, is a wrong terminology. The term kobo is actually a French term, and when you translate it, it means a black crow. You know, this is not a black crow.
This is a vulture.
Yeah. So, and the name kobo actually, you know, me personally, I think it has a lot of negativity around it because people just be like, oh, that's a kobo, it's so stink, it's so nasty. And, you know, they get a lot of, they get disrespected on, they are undervalued, underappreciated. And, you know, part of our job and a lot of what I love doing is going out to the schools and educating people. And when we leave our school, you know, the public or the kids, we leave that education with them that these birds are so important to our ecosystem. And, you know, when you see them, it's not to scorn them or look at them in utter disgust because we need them to clean up the environment. Yeah.
One thing I like about when you guys bring birds on your show, they tend to be, yes, they fly a lot, they might flap their wings, but they tend to be very calm. So I don't know if that's a testament to how well you guys handle the bird or if it's just the nature of birds in general to be very calm.
Well, all of our ambassadors, they go through a period of training where we socialize them, we work with them, we teach them, you know, how to be comfortable around being around the public, around people touching them and stuff. So, well, actually Chase, so this is just a little backstory about Chase. Chase, we got him when he was about 2 weeks old, yeah? A lot of people, don't know that vultures actually nest on the ground. They have their babies on the ground. So someone who lives on a farm, their dog found Chase as a chick and brought him inside the house. He was like, here, I bring this gift for you. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so the people, you know, they got this bird, they didn't know what to do with it, so they contacted us. So we went and we picked up the bird. So vultures, when they are babies, they actually are very small, fluff, well, a beige-looking fluff ball. They look nothing like how they look right now. Yeah, yeah. They're very cute. I personally find it very cute when they are smaller. So when we got him, you know, after like about 2 weeks of having him, he got something that birds get called canker sores. So if you look at his beak, he actually has a deformed beak.
Yeah, I was watching that.
Yeah, and he has some scarring there between his eyes. So basically, his whole face, everything was just covered in sores. Like his eyes was covered in sores, he couldn't see. He had sores growing down inside his throat, so he couldn't eat, he couldn't swallow. We literally had to like put a tube every time, like 3 times for the day, put a tube down his throat into his crop and feed him. So this bird, you know, this bird, we put a lot of work and dedication and time and effort into saving this bird. We honestly didn't, it got so bad we didn't think that he was going to make it, but he's here today with us.
She's the trooper. I love that.
He's a warrior.
Mr. Mead, tell me, first of all, do you like my tagline?
It'll work. It'll work. Yeah, it'll work. You know, some things have to marinate and kusumi a bit and get to you, and then you can say, yeah, this is it.
He loves it, okay? He loves it. All right, so look at this. Let me see, I don't know if you've seen this, but the way he's turning his head, why is that? Like that? Is it just like watching around, or is he uncomfortable?
Yeah, that's looking around. So notice he didn't move his body. All right, for us, we have very limited eye motion, and then after we have to turn our heads and so on. So he can do that as most of these birds can do, almost 200 and almost 70 degrees. They can get a good view in with their head, so they can stay in one spot. So usually you would see them on a pole, a tree or something like that, a branch, and they would stay there, and they would just literally pan, looking around to see what there is to eat.
So what's like the natural habitat? Where do they thrive? Where do they live?
Well, surprisingly, this was a migratory bird to Trinidad and Tobago. Well, not Tobago, Trinidad. They are not found in Tobago at all. I got a report from the United Cobra Association claiming that they have left Tobago because there is nothing for them to eat. It is too clean. Wow. Tobago is clean, green, and serene, and they don't like that.
So that speaks to the fact that it's a vulture?
Yeah.
All right.
Right? So there's nothing there for them to eat. They actually tried to introduce some of them to Tobago many years ago, a few decades ago, I think 5 of them, and they came back home. Yeah. They strike action, and that's it. They gave up on it. Trinidad is home. That's where we belong. And Trinidad is home because I guess we kind of dirty.
Kinda.
We stink and dirty.
Really,
okay, in a lot of areas in terms of our disposal of carcasses and general waste and garbage. So that's why they're important. So they went from migratory, coming down to Trinidad from Christmas to Carnival, and then they decide, hey, the weather nice, the food in abundance, you know, and nice place, let me stay, why do you not stay? So they just literally started staying in Trinidad until now. It can be rivaled for our national bird. They're so populous. Wow. They are so populous. There are a lot of birds. I'm not saying it should be. I'm just saying there's so many of them. They're ubiquitous. They're everywhere you look in this country. On this island, you can see vultures, and sometimes in their hundreds.
So I know that sometimes when birds who are not native to the land come in, it may cause some sort of disarray. Like they may be, what's the word I'm looking for?
Well, they're not invasive. Yeah, they don't become invasive. See, if we went, like what's happening in America, somebody went and bought starlings from Europe and brought them into America because he was a Shakespearean fan, and that was in one of Shakespeare's plays. So he brought the birds, sparrows, starling, and something else. He brought them over to America, and they literally exploded. So they are everywhere. So while America's native passenger pigeon declined and went extinct, the starlings' numbers increased. So that is an invasive animal. Migratory, they would come for a period of time. So when it's winter up there in North America, they come down to South America, and then they come across to Trinidad. But like I said, some of them decided to stay. And who knows what really caused this? Like I say, I assume it's because of the abundance of niceness for them, food and the temperature and so on. But it seems that sometimes some birds fall out of their natural migratory behavior and decide to pick up residency, right? So Chase has a green card and he has been naturalized. Many decades now he's been naturalized. So Chase is a true Trini. All right, he ain't no visiting no more. Yeah, they're not coming here no more. They're here, they've been here. Navel stringberry here. Go back with mother, and she mother. Here, so he's a true Trini. So we cannot disparage him. He's not illegal, he's not invasive, he's not an alien, he is one of we. And to show that he's one of we, he just mixes with us quite freely.
So well. So I'm getting a comment from a viewer, a question. They said, raising this kobo in captivity, do you allow the bird to scavenge?
So Chase doesn't have a cage. He is a free-flying bird. He mostly stays indoors, his choice. When he's ready, he goes outside. But because being rehabbed from such a young age, and being fed fresh meat, if I introduced, rotten meat, or even if I leave the meat out too long and it starts to smell and stuff, he doesn't want that because he grew up eating the fresh meat and stuff.
Wow.
Yeah.
So how is he still with that? Because he's still a vulture, I guess, in physicality, but in behavior, not really.
Well, I guess if it is he was to go out there, and his natural survival instinct would eventually kick in, and he would realize because they literally adapted to the environment that they live in. So he would have to adapt, and something would just click in him, and he would be like, okay, I'm no longer getting fresh meat. This is what I have to eat. I'll eat this. But as of right now, he's bougie.
Very bougie, Chase. Very bougie, again, hand-fed. Because one of the questions also was, how do you feed him?
Well, so actually, as a chick, so we had to mimic the way that the parent would feed the baby, which is basically beak to beak. So to get him, after he got over his illness and he started eating on his own, I would normally put the food in my hand and give him it like this. So you see that he already knows to expect food.
Oh, wow. Because he got him over here. Can you do that again, please? It just, hope the camera can pick that up. You can zoom in.
Look, I have something, look.
You have something, Phil?
Fool me once.
Fool me twice. Shame on me. He's like, I'm not going to eat anything again for the day. So when Chase came in, he kind of made a little bit of a mess. What happened there?
Well, that's one of the ways that they have adapted to suit the job that they do, right? So what he did, if you look at his feet, his feet is white. They say when your foot white like kobo, that term, that's where that term comes from. It's a process called urohydrosis, and what they do is they actually urinate on their legs, right? So that serves two functions. One is to keep them cool when they're out in the hot sun, and the other function is basically to kill whatever bacteria that they would pick up on their legs while they're out scavenging.
So the urine almost kills the bacteria.
Right. So it goes counter to what people say, that kobo poop, wouldn't say the word they actually use, we'll use poop, a family-friendly word, is the most disgusting thing. So let's go back to the source now. These birds eat carrion, dead, decaying, rotting stuff. I mean, you're passing on the highway and you see this dog that's there for a couple of days and nice and swollen, ready to explode, and that's prime food for them. 99.9% of other animals can't even come close to that. And the reason why they can consume that is that they have adapted their whole life towards doing what they do. Most vultures you would see are usually bald, very few, if any, feathers around their heads, because now you're poking into a rotten flesh of an animal there. So you don't want that sticking up and staying all in your face. So that's the first part why they have that look. Almost all of them usually have that bald face. Then they do not make any noise other than a sort of hiss, because they don't have a voice box. A voice box is a very complicated thing. So first now we start off with the beak to rip the rotten flesh, the head to get down in there without getting anything stuck on it. Then it goes down into the throat where there is basically clear passage to the stomach, so nothing to stick up and hold up there. And when it gets down into the stomach, that is the boiler factory down there. In their stomach, their stomach acid is almost 1. So if you understand the pH scale, 7 is neutral, above 7 is alkaline, and below that, anytime you're going below that, is acid. So when you get down to 1, it's almost like sulfuric acid. So almost nothing can survive in there in terms of bacteria, pathogens, diseases. So they will remove leptospirosis, rabies, anthrax, botulism, all those things and more they remove from the environment by them eating it. So let's just say, for example, a hypothetical situation, a dog in Trinidad has rabies. Not a factor that we need to worry about now or soon, but we always have to keep monitoring for it. So let's say it's a rabid dog and got out onto the highway because it's crazy and snarling and it gets run over. Whap! So it's a dead dog on the road. The dead animal removal team, that has been started, defunct, whatever it is, 90% of the times you can't get them. So now who's going to go? Are you going to go out there and remove that dog? Most of the times the owners, that's it. As far as they're concerned, their responsibility for the animal ends.
Because it's like...
Except in the case where they're really loving people and they really see the dog as part of their family, start to finish, and they will take it and bury it. But most of the time they turn their back and eyes that they let the government do that kind of attitude. So this dog now that has the rabies bacteria on its body is there. So you pass it with your car's passing, and it explodes and you're running over it and it's running under your wheel and in your wheel well and all that under your undercarriage of your car, and then you drive home into your nice gated driveway and into that section of your house now where your door rolls up. And you drive in there on the tiles, and kids run out, daddy, daddy, mommy, mommy, barefooted, and would have walked and would have picked up that bacteria. So now you brought home, say, anchar or coma or tulum for them, and they're like, yeah, and they start eating, and they feel this thing on their foot and they scratch their foot and they continue eating because you can never get children to wash their hands when they're supposed to. So now you have dog, car, tile, foot, hand, mouth. Now your child is sick with rabies.
How?
Goes to the hospital and everybody's freaking out. How the hell did this happen? The child didn't even leave the house for the past week. How is this possible? But we need to understand, and this is where humans fall down. There's a concept of one health. If the environment isn't healthy, humans, you're going to die. You are going, there's no ifs, ands, or buts. There's no way to sugarcoat it. You are going to die. So that simple scenario, that is how so many diseases are transferred. And if you ever forget and take your mind and you're off of the prize and the goal, I have one word that will bring you back. COVID. How many of us has never left Trinidad, never left their village, never left their home, and it came home to find us? How many people lost their lives around the world? Something that started in China came right here to Trinidad. We shut our borders, we did. You can do what you want. As we socialize and move around, these things get around, and the problem is we can't see them. So you think it's not there? No, it's worse. It's worse when you can't see it. If you can see it, you can isolate it. So if now we reverse that situation and that dog got run over, we still couldn't get the government to remove the animal, but Chase and his buddies like, dead dog, Solomon Hochoy, Nesha go on us turn off, let me go, partners. You understand? 20 of them come down, and in a matter of hours, clean that to bones. And because of that, almost 1 stomach acid pH, when the rabies gets in there, it's gone. When the anthrax gets in there, it's gone. Botulism, leptospirosis, it's gone. They die out. So it's the end game. So it comes like if there's a mess on the ground and your mom comes with Clorox and cleans it up. Clorox cleans 99% of all household germs. So it's the same kind of way. That's your mom cleaning up to make sure that you're safe. And there's a correlation between the survivability and the viability of vultures and leptospirosis in developing countries. When their numbers go down, leptospirosis goes up. It's as simple as that. And there's many other complex issues related to their health. So we need, for our health, safety, and well-being, we need to protect these animals and not harm them. I'm not saying go and love them and pick them up. Leave them, let them do what they have to do. They don't need your help, but also they do not need your ignorance and your apathy and the way you treat them. Live and let live, and they will do an amazing job all the time, all over. And very important, you know, even like, I mean, there's so many situations. I've just learned a situation recently, Grand Riviere, that world famous beach, the highest nesting density of leatherback turtles anywhere in the world, right there on that tiny beach, just less than a kilometer. And so many turtles come there.
Up,
yeah, and what happens is that you have nest intrusion. So when they lay, other turtles come up, and when they're covering up and digging, they throw out their eggs, and so it's a kind of messy situation there. But that's how Mother Nature, you know, kind of does it. So now in the morning you have a lot of eggs that were dug up on the beach. But from 5:30 in the morning, who's there first on the beach? These guys. They might say, oh my gosh, that's horrible, they're eating the turtle eggs. But they're already dug up and flipped out. And if they remain there, no human would want to walk on that beach. The smell would be so atrocious. No one would want to go to the hotels, the guest houses, nobody would want to go to the beach. The fishermen couldn't do their work. It would be disgusting. So they're out there from 5:30 in the morning, and they're eating all the eggs that are exposed.
So let the vultures nest.
They're doing their job.
Yeah.
There is a situation now that we have to balance as an environmentalist, because later in the day now, during hatching season, they will and do predate on the hatchlings.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that a program gets in place where we can use some of the dogs that used to eat some of the baby turtles and dig up the nest, train them to chase the vultures. They won't kill them, just chase them, right? Because they can move faster than a human can up and down the beach. So you have a little potong trained to chase vultures, and that now, it gives the turtle crew people a chance to collect the nestlings, hold them until the night, and release them. Night is the safest time to release them. Easier, less sun, and less predators around. So it's a balance, but we have to understand that. So from watching, observing, and data, we know what's going on, and now we can implement measures to ensure that our numbers of turtles going back into the water are as high as possible. Because the number of the ones that make it, 1 in 1,000.
Yeah. I remember hearing that statistic a while back. I think I've only ever gone to watch turtles, the leatherback turtles, once in my life, unfortunately. I know, don't watch me like that. Once in my life, I remember it up to this day. It's one of the most impactful moments of my life.
Yeah, life is tough out there for wildlife. Nature has a balance and so on. And what we have to do is, one, try to understand it, and try not to interrupt it. And in cases where some of our activity would have already caused a disruption, try to mitigate that by some other action. And that's where we exist as a wildlife rehabilitators. One, the education, like, so people always say, oh, I didn't know. That's a little cool down there for the morning.
Thanks for the breeze there, Chase.
My gosh. It's a good thing I didn't put on false eyelashes this morning. They would have fly off.
The same.
You understand? Huh?
Or a wig.
But, you know, I've given up on the wigs. You know.
Yeah. Really? No, I didn't notice.
No more lace fronts for me. Okay, I'm going all natural. All right? This is, take me as I am, as an old guy with balding and gray hair and no eyelashes.
No question, why would he just do that randomly though? Is he just trying to get air under his wings? Does he want to fly away?
Randomly, what propels you to yawn or stretch?
Tired?
You just have that, you know, you feel that from me like that there. Yeah, you know, even if you're driving sometimes, you're driving with one hand and you just switch hands and you sort of, you know, that's same way we feel, they feel in it. Their bodies are pretty much the same. In fact, a wing is a hand, right? You have your humerus, your radius, your ulna, the carpals, and it's the same thing. So same way you feel to just sometimes and, you know, stretch it out. That's them right there. It's getting comfortable.
Forget that little ad that Mr. Mead gave us for Clorox. So Clorox, sponsor us, okay? All right, so I'm getting another question from a viewer, David. He's saying their natural instinct is to scavenge on dead and decaying corpses. How are they able to detect food from flying so high up? Is it that they have excellent eyesight or smell?
That's trick. That's a trick. Here in Trinidad, we have 2 forms of vultures. This is the American black vulture. And there's one, if you look closely, would have a red head. That's called a turkey vulture. And the turkey vulture is one of the few birds that has a keen sense of smell. Birds do not smell very well, if at all, really.
Really?
Okay, it's usually eyesight. So hummingbirds, They go by colors, patterns, and they remember which flowers they went to. They can't smell. So this is also what we tell people. If you handle a baby bird, you're like, oh my God, don't handle it. The mother will reject it. No, they can't, and they won't. Because once that baby bird goes, Ma is there. Okay, so they're not going to let any human get in their way. So let's say they're hanging out on the beatum, and 5 o'clock in the morning, time to go to work. They're all just hanging around there, and they're watching Mr. Turkey Vulture. They're not as common as these guys, okay, but they'll be around. And if Mr. Turkey Vulture takes off and goes west, the fella's like, oi, spot a man say west is where we're going today.
Yeah.
So they will go west. But they also have amazing eyesight. So they follow the vulture, and if he says, okay, food in this area, they go there. But they would start, that's why they circle on thermals.
Yeah.
They don't really fly that much, They flop and so on. You see the big wind, it takes a lot of power and energy to fly. But once they get up on the thermals, the rise in air creates these air patterns and flows, and that's why you see them just literally circling like that. And the wings just literally open, not flapping. That's soaring. That's what they do very well. Their wings are very big. And I know how they operate very well because at our last location for the center, we were on a farm, about 30 acres, and we had a horse, a rescued horse. Yeah, no people, we do not rescue horses. Stop that one time. This air happened again. We get catch for that already, no more. I can tell you the sufferation we went through. So daily I would have to take the horse out to pasture, besides giving it copious amounts of food that is a custom that is very expensive on the track, out to pasture in different areas to graze. So one area we chose by a pond, and my wife went with me. You know, she's like, my gosh, I never came out to this area by this pond before. It's so lovely here in the grass. Guys had just cut the grass. So while I was seeing about the horse, she decided to just literally lay down there and look at the sky. And she just about was dozing off, you know, looking at the light show. She closed her eyes, and this is nice, and the breeze is nice. So there were vultures circling up ahead. And she said every time I opened my eyes, they came down lower. Yeah. They came down lower, and they were coming out until they were. She was like, I got it. She got scared, and she got up because she was afraid that they would come down and go after her, right? Right. So I told her, I said, is either you need to change your deodorant because you're smelling real bad, or it's their eyesight. They see something laying there dead, and they're coming down. With each circle, they're coming down lower and lower. Yeah, well, she didn't appreciate the deodorant comment, but yeah, the truth is that they do have amazing eyesight. They will see something, and they will come down and investigate it.
Almost like a whirlpool that they form.
Yeah, they just keep coming down lower and lower. She said every time she just kind of doze off and look, she's like, wait a minute, they were higher before. And by the third time, you're like, okay, these birds are going to come and get me. Before they do, let me get up, you know. And
it was hilarious. Just like, yeah, when I reach inside, same thing, yeah.
Right, so be careful your deodorants you wear out there, people. I'm just kidding.
Make sure it works.
Right? Yeah. Test it at home before you come out to the public. Some people just wait till they reach on the bus to test their deodorant.
Yeah, just because it says 48 hours strength doesn't mean you need to test it.
Don't test it, yeah, you know? Yeah. No, it just took me back to my days when we were doing some stuff up at UE. It had something called the Super Express back then. I went from San Fernando straight up to UE. So a lot of us on that bus, but man, that morning for that bus there, it was crowded. So it's had a lot of standing room only, you know, and you'd hold on to the strap, you know, and then you would be like, whew. And sometimes you wish that you had sinus issues and your nose was clogged up because, man, oh man. And like I say, it's kind of wrong this day and age. Even back then, for first thing in the morning,
for you to be smelling like that.
For you to be smelling like a bodybuilder. Strong, strong, strong. Oh, gosh.
No, not for everybody. First thing in the morning is different, right? Maybe you work at night and you had a whole day already. But that's when you just pack a little deodorant in your bag, you know, to take with you.
Well, most shifts would be 12 hours. So if you buy the 48 hours, you can get away with 12 hours. Yeah. You know, it shouldn't be vamping that way at all. I'm saying straight out, yeah, vamping. And I'm saying there's a public service announcement to a lot of people out there, because a lot of people won't say it, so I will say it, okay? People, we need to be mindful of our environment. Your environment also includes people around you, okay? I see men working aqua for taxi. Understandable, because it's hybrid, you could save some money, you can make a little extra money, right? But you jump in an aqua as a man like me with fairly broad shoulders, right? And that man will go and pick up two bigger than me men, and I in the middle so. With these men there. And then the cacophony of smells that you are exposed to in there, you know, It is why I pay my money and make sure that my vehicle is working for a reason. In fact, that is the first reason that I got my first car when I came back to Trinidad. Okay, I got into a back of what they call a B14 or something like that there, and I'm sitting down there in Shagona. I was really happy I got a seat, and then I see the driver blowing the horn. He's going like slow motion, and he mentioned it to and he doing the fella so. And it's like in slow motion. And when I look, this guy had to be close to 400 pounds. And I'm watching this guy, and I'm just watching his hand coming towards the door, and I'm like, no, you're not serious. And the door opens, and this guy does this and throws himself and sits on half of me. He is sitting on my lap. Okay?
No, for real.
All the way from Chaguanas to San Fernando.
Absolutely not. No.
And I tell him to go wrong. He said, oh, you want me to fall on the door? I can't go no more. He had to try 3 times to close the door. So to close the door now, he's sitting already on my lap. He had to come across now, all on me. His head reaching next fella to slam that door on the 3rd time. And then when he rocked back, so he's still on my leg.
No.
I was planning to go into San Fernando. I couldn't take it anymore. By the time we turned by the bypass there, St. Joseph Village, I said, driver, I'm taking it here.
Yeah, no.
When this guy rocked out of the car and I got out, I fell to the ground. Because that leg and this whole side of my body was dead. It was like immobile.
Don't make me ugly laugh on camera.
I tell you, you know, and I'm saying to myself, this must be what a stroke feels like. This whole side, nothing. You know, and I'm there on the ground, the guy looking down at me. You all right, partner? I said, yeah, I'm going to be all right. He said, I kind of sit down on you there a little bit. I watch up like that, and it's like, at least it's over. At least it's over. And I'm saying, and as I walked home limping and flexing my body, trying to get my circulation going, I'm saying, Ricardo, you need to get into a car.
Yeah.
This cannot be happening to you.
Yeah, I mean, and it just goes to show, as you were saying, consideration for those around you. Even if it's wildlife or if it's just the people around you, it's just consideration. Yeah. I mean, a situation like that is what made me get my license. Because absolutely not. Imagine, because I'm an average size lady, and if you're going to pick up sometimes 2 or 3 other people, and those people, I mean, if you're bigger, that's okay, fine. But taxis, come on. If you're seeing 2 people already there that filling up the seats, why are you going to get another person that you know isn't going to be able to comfortably fit in the back seat?
It's all about the Benjamins, baby. And it's kind of all right when it's a short trip. We see Chaguanas to San Fernando on an evening rush hour. You need that traffic on the Solomon Hochoy.
You're real forgiving, boy. Nah. 2 minutes, I don't care. I don't want 2 minutes with somebody.
I tell you, after a while, it didn't even really matter so much. It was just like no feelings. But
that's not
life
good.
goes on. That's not good. But so everything is related and links back really in life. And that's why I'm trying to get people on the synergy. Stop looking for the opposition and we against them and we just do it this way and they do it that way. Look for the synergies in life between people and our environment. We can't survive without them. They will be amazing without us. So make it work for you by finding a way to appreciate them. And if you can't do that, at least do no harm. That's the least we can ask for.
So this next question came in by another viewer, and every time I ask Mr. Mead a question like this, he always says humans, right? So I'm just gonna set it up. The question is, do they have any natural predators?
Homo sapiens, Homo erectus. There would be larger birds of prey that can predate on them. The eagles, modern eagle, but I mean, because they're pretty big, so you'd have to be eagle size to be predated on, you know. But other than that, if it's in the region and there is a lion, hyena, that sort of, you know, we're fortunate we don't have these, or unfortunate, whichever you want to. But yes, there are dozens of different types of vultures, and they do fall prey because a lot of times they do challenge somebody else for that food, and now what they have, he says, all right, you want to eat the dead? I will take you alive, sort of thing. And you've seen them in standoffs with lions and hyenas and so on like that there. And I guess, well, because they are not, say, originally from Trinidad, there isn't a hierarchy with a predator that's really above them. Our largest predator would possibly be the ocelot, and they are nocturnal. These are diurnal very much, so they're not, no challenge there. So other than that, their main enemy would be, drumroll, human beings. And we do terrible things to them, including poisoning them.
Wow.
Sometimes inadvertently, though.
Yeah, okay.
What has happened is that there was an incident years ago And shout out to Chester Sombrano. Every time he comes to the center, I always knock him for this. I don't know if you know that video. Folks, you can look this up on YouTube. Kobo, I think they're probably there, or vulture attacks people in a car.
Oh.
So there, in Chagaramas, there was a die-off, a bird die-off. So that's very alarming. So they, news covered it, the EMA people were looking at it. It apparently, someone poisoned dogs or cats and disposed of them. And of course, the vultures do what they're trained to do. That's their job. Oh, meat time, they go and they eat that. And a lot of the poisons we use do not break down. All right, so it'll go on and on until it literally just is gone. So they probably use lanate or something like that. I think that's one of the most ridiculous ones. And they killed the dogs, and then the vultures ate the dogs, and then there was a die-off. We're talking dozens of vultures dead in an area in Chagaramas. So they sent off one of the news companies, the local TV company, they sent off the crew, Chester Sombrano and a lady, and I think a cameraman, to do the coverage. And they were looking at them, he's like, that one looks kind of weak and sickly, like it's going to die. And you see them filming and talking and so on there. And then the vulture said, it's all your humans. And he flew straight into the car. And you hear the screaming and the bawling. Oh my gosh. Chester Sombrano turned into the proverbial female dog. If you hear the scream, I bug him about that. He's my partner.
Chester, you had a very interesting career thus far.
That's a moment that's going to live on. I'm waiting until somebody uses that in a meme somewhere. It was a little bit before the memes thing started, but now that I'm saying it out loud, maybe somebody might go and dig it up and put it up. But it was just, you can't write that sort of stuff in a script. It just happens that afterwards you're like, they couldn't find the door handle to open and get out. It was crazy. The last thing you were expecting, these half-dead birds, so many dead ones, half-dead bird, to literally come at you. Nobody knows why the bird really did that. But because, he's in shock, he's in, stress, trauma, it flew into the car and just freaked them the hell out. It couldn't really do anything to them in the car because now he is probably more frightened than them. But it was a hilarious moment that you could tell people about for the rest of your life, that this was it.
I don't know if any of the guys behind on the crew could try and find the video for us. Even if we can't play it today, we can play it for next Wednesday. Oh, hi Chester. Yeah. Hello Chester. I think he just peed, right?
Yeah.
Urohydrosis. Yep.
Urohydrosis.
Yeah. And part of the thing with that also is that their poop is actually the cleanest poop you can find anyway. Because of the acid. Yeah. So if you ate something bad, you can, here we go again. All right, that's it. Nice, thank you. Yeah. If you ate something bad, a pathogen, possibly even eggs from like a snail or something, you can become a host. So it will either do one or two things. It can kill you, okay, or you can become a host. So it lives in your body and then it will pass out in your urates or fecal matter and then go on, the life cycle continues. But once it gets into their body, it's end game. There's no more continuation of it. So that is why their fecal matter is so clean. Well, ours, we spread cholera and all sort of horrible things spread through our fecal matter and urates and so on. Theirs very, very clean. It's the byproduct of that acid that is so high.
Yeah.
So we're safe.
One thing I realized is that when urohydrosis, when that happened, he moved to the end so that it wouldn't get on you. And so that's very polite. He's a gentleman.
I'm just happy that they don't, do they, I can't remember, do they shoot their poop?
That's so cool.
Yeah.
He does? Right, yeah. A lot of the raptors do that because of what they eat. You don't want that poop to be right around you and so on. So chickens walk and they poop and they walk away. But the raptors that stay in that area in the nest, they would projectile poop. That's the word I was looking for. Projectile poop, shoot that messy stuff away, especially if they're in nested area, and to keep themselves clean and give their parents less work to keep away disease and so on.
So Chester, you're facing the right way, most immaculate direction.
No, you're calling Chase Chester.
Sorry.
Chester, Chester sees this, Chester gonna kill me. He gonna kill me.
I apologize in advance.
All you don't want to let that go, eh? All you do, it was funny. It was funny.
May not play the video for the sake of dignity.
We'll find that video. I will find it.
You see, your own partners, you want doing this to you. But I really liked for Chase exactly, because he has this, is it wrinkles or dimply wrinkles around his face? Is it because, what is it there to protect?
Well, just as Ricardo said, that the whole head there without any feathers is really like adaptation mechanism that they developed for sticking their head into carcasses. So Chase is only 2 years old, and as he gets older, so the difference, how you can tell the difference between a young vulture and an adult vulture actually is by this little receding feather line there. Right, so young vultures, you wouldn't see all that wrinkly stuff around his face, but as he gets older, so now he's going on 2, you would see this feather line starting to recede back, and more of that wrinkly looking skin will start to show up.
That wrinkly looking skin is akin to the wigs that the magistrates would wear. So when you see a big mature male that has like literally like a full wig, you can tell, okay, he's got some time under his wings.
So some wouldn't get in the wrinkly parts either, or do they like wash their faces after, do some sort of cleaning ritual?
They love to bathe. And then the part of the thing, when you pass them on a light pole and they're doing this, sun, UV degrades a lot of pathogens and parasites and so on there. So the UV light literally, and the heat helps to kill off anything that's on them. So there's a whole process that they go through, but they love to bathe. So they will bathe afterwards and get up there, and now I'm drying out and fluffing out and getting some breeze and doing well. So imagine this. Because people do not care about vultures in a country, more and more people are being killed by leopards.
Okay, and to correlate that for me, please.
See, and that's why I say when you research and you look at what's going on, I keep forgetting the name of the particular chemical, but India has the largest standing population of bovine, cattle, all different kinds. As you know, in the Hindu religion, it's considered sacred. So you do not kill them, you do not consume them. You're only allowed to consume the milk products, ghee, butter, that sort of thing. So I guess because it gives you so much, you're not allowed to kill it. So now if they have 1 billion people, they probably have 2 billion cattle, but they have the largest standing population of cattle because they don't kill them. And the cattle would get sick, and they started using a particular medication. And what that did was that when the cattle eventually died, the medication in their body, when the vultures ate the cattle, it prevented them from passing urates. So the vultures died also from that. Now the sad thing is that this was identified, this is the problem. And they said, you can switch from the 50-cent medication to the $1 medication and save the lives of all these vultures. Farmers, no, too much money, we're not going to do that. So it was pretty much rejected. So it continued. The cattle would die, and people they're not consuming, so the cattle stay out there in the field, and the vultures would be consuming them, and the vultures would die. So their numbers would die. So the vultures' numbers died, the cattle will still die the same way. Now, stray dogs become a problem. Stray dogs started eating that as meat, as food. So the stray dog population explode. A female would do great eating that level of meat. Now she has 10 pups to see about. Makes it easy. So now you have more. Whereas she was emaciated before and probably couldn't even get pregnant. Now she is fat and full and eating well. Babies, and the babies surviving. So now you have an explosion of stray dogs, which within itself is a major health hazard. They spread a lot of diseases. Nobody's cleaned up behind these animals. So the problem's developing. Leopards now, very intelligent and very pugnacious hunters. They are not shy for any reason. Leopards like jaguars, it's like leopards in the east, jaguars in the west. They are not shy. They will go after people, they will go after animals. Leopards started eating dogs. They said, okay, wonderful. Leopards eating dogs, we have natural pest control. But not all dogs are stray dogs. Or even where you find stray dogs, you usually find people. So the leopards now started coming into villages and even cities to get dogs. And when they encounter people, they don't care. Remember I said it's a very pugnacious predator. So people, you're just an obstacle, or you will probably be food also. So you have lots of videos showing leopards removing animals. Literally a dog sitting outside. There's one is just the most shocking one for me, because the dog is chained outside the door, he hears something, he's like, And as soon as he goes back down, you just see literally a flash. The leopard grabs him. You hear the of the dog, and then you just see the chain hanging. The chain hanging because he grabs him and gone with him. All right? But many other videos with leopards inside of people's homes. Fellas with brooms and trying to beat this leopard, and he bouncing around the walls there, trying to go out there and trying to get out. All of this because we didn't care about them. All right? And it happened twofold. With them dying, okay, and them not being able to scavenge, the stray dog population came up, more people got sick, and then the leopard came up because that's free, easy food. And then the leopards came into the towns and the cities. So that's a very common thing in cities and towns that are, you know, closer to, you know, marginal fringe forest areas and so on like that there. So it's basically I tell people, if you like yourselves, you like your family, do right by these animals. You know, everything is connected. And my fascination with and learning more about wildlife is when you learn about the connections, it's like, wow, that is amazing. It really is. Because we take these things for granted, or we don't know them at all. Yeah, he has these wings. Those feathers, especially the primaries on the ends, they can hit you a really hard lash when he gets to really flopping. It hits you, you know, like a towel. You say, towel can't do you anything. Let your little brother take that same towel and snap it at you now and hit you. You know, it's gonna hurt. So that's kind of what that. The speed it generates a velocity, it will hurt quite a bit. And let's see the main ones at the end. Most of the other feathers are fairly soft. But the primaries, those first 10 ones, yeah, they hit you hard.
So I don't know if he's getting a little frustrated with just being
he's trying to get restless.
Yeah,
like, I want to do something. What are we going to do now? Yeah, just so you'll see he's going to try to jump on her shoulder, jump on her head. That's who he is.
All right. So I wouldn't keep you too long again, Chase, but I wanted to ask Donna, was there anything that we can do as a population to help protect these animals and care for them?
I think education would be the most that we could do for them, because the more we educate the public about, you know, their importance and the role they play in the ecosystem and whatnot, we become more aware of the importance, you know, and with that awareness brings a respect for them. And it's like Ricardo said, you don't have to like them, you just have to respect them and, you know, the job that they do.
And respect could just be keeping away from them, letting them do what they do.
Leave them alone.
Yeah, the sad thing in Trinidad and Tobago, and if we're going to push for this really hard this year, these birds are not protected. And again, through ignorance. Yeah, through ignorance. They should be protected.
But imagine, I would imagine Trinidad would be like, oh, you mean they're putting cobos on the protection list? That doesn't make any sense.
And here's the reason it makes sense. A lot of them that we've had to care for have been shot. You're not eating it, you're shooting it. That is absolute cruelty. Why are you doing that? Now, I would excuse people in a situation where, and they can and do affect poultry sometimes, where they would get into the brooding areas and they would eat chicks and ducklings and stuff like that. So, but a lot of times I have to educate farmers. I said, you know, it's your nastiness and bringing them, and now they created problems, and now you want me to get rid of them. So if you keep your environment a little more secure and a lot cleaner, they won't come around. But they would deal with chickens or throw the dead chickens right there. So now the vultures are there, and now they're waiting more. When they can't get enough dead ones, they can eat a duckling or a little chick quite easily. So it's a cycle, and you understand when you look and examine. So it's not always what they tell you up on top. Walk backward a bit and see the history, or spend some time around the activity, and you say, oh, yo, what are you doing? Well, we just throw the chicken guts and the feathers and the heads there. There you go. You called your problem. And now you're going to say, you have too much flies, you have too much vultures, you're creating the problem. Better disposal, better, you know, we have to understand that, and many times they don't. So I spend some time speaking to them or just being around them to figure out what can be done as an environmentalist to make it good for them and good for you. Because we have to strike that balance. Without that balance, you know, Marshall say, everything is balance.
Everything is
balance.
All right. So say it's 6 o'clock in the morning. Actually, no, 6 o'clock they might be sleeping. So let's say it's about 3 p.m. in the afternoon. You need to run and reach home, and you see a kobo in your backyard. You have a mango tree. You have chickens, ducklings roaming around. You see a kobo there. What do?
Okay, so you have chickens and ducklings roaming around.
Yeah, you have a little nest, coop.
Or if they're cooped, you make your coop secure, and that does a couple things. It is keep the foul teeth of them out, right? So here's almost anything will predate on chicks and ducklings, you know. Let's start off with cats. They could get in there. Mongoose, an introduced species that is now a problem here in Trinidad. It's one of the few animals I agree with on the pest list. Then you have different birds of prey. You know, we have 49 different ones. I mean, these are birds of prey also. So lots of different things can get them, not just these guys. These guys will probably be the last on the list. They like to say they prefer dead. But if, you know, it's a little easy, they can take it also. So a chick would be akin to a hatchling turtle. That's easy prey. They flip it over, get the eyes, get the belly, and they're gone. So if your assets, your chickens and ducklings, are worth something to you, do better to just protect them until they get bigger.
Okay, so you have a secure coop. You're technically a responsible person, but you see a kobo and you had a grown one too, and you don't know what to do. Your first instinct is to take a broom and try to do it. What do you do?
It's not going to get into your coop unless you leave it open.
What if it's just in the backyard?
Let's put on your hose and spray it. I advise people to spray it with the hose. I advise people to do it quite a lot. It's a non-lethal, disruptive method of getting animals away. Okay, and most people have a hose somewhere that can, you know, point it up with a little gun in it or something like that there to just spray water. That's it, just to disrupt them, just make it uncomfortable. He didn't come there to get wet, so that the fact that he get wet there, especially if you do it a couple of times, they are gone. They're like, no, we're not here for this. And then you usually get between 40 and 60 psi out of a hose. So that velocity of water hitting them is not going to harm them, but it's going to make it very uncomfortable. You're telling them you're not welcome here.
So you're hitting them or just the ground? Or
no, them, shoot at them, their feet, their body. You're like, we don't want to get wet. We don't want to get wet. They're going to be gone. It's safe. It's safe. The only way it can be damaging is if you're literally almost point blank. And there's no way that wild animal is going to let you get within 6 inches of him to hit him with that there. So from your distance, so that's also, it's safe, because I tell a lot of ladies call and complain, what do I do, what do I do? Even people have called about monkeys. And it's on my roof, and it's doing this, and it's in the gallery, I'm afraid to go outside. I said, you have a hose on the side of the house? He said, yes. I said, turn off everything else in it, and just leave that hose on so you get the full pressure, put that nozzle on, and just spray that monkey. Everywhere he goes, just spray him. She called back and told me 3 sprays and he was gone. I said, it's not a solution to the problem, but right now it prevents that animal from doing harm to your premises or even you. And the worst thing they can ever do is try to feed it. That's the worst. People do that. I have a case like, I have a problem with a monkey. And then you know, Bobby, we're not feeding it today. You're feeding it. That's why he keeps coming and creating problems. Anytime he doesn't get food, he's going to act up a little bit and so on there. So people have to understand, a lot of times it's our actions. The farmer throwing the chicken guns, calling the kobo, and then he crying about the kobo. The lady feeding the monkey, and now she worried that he could attack her children. You should hear this lady on the phone. You know, the monkey is being so aggressive and he's come on the porch. Because you're feeding it. And, and they wouldn't tell us that. It's just the daughter literally bust she files right there. And then I had to interrogate, how long? Well, it's for the past couple of months. What? A well-established habit, he knows he can go to this house and get food and that house and so on. So even when we used to attempt to catch them, there was a problem. We put in food in the cage, and you're giving them gourmet food outside the cage. The monkey is stupid. You understand? And well, even now, mango season, I put in stuff in the cage. He eating mango, watching the cage like, really? Grapes? I have mango. Starch, Julie, what you want? You know, so it's a lot of working together. It's a lot of almost like crime scene investigation, trying to pull information from people who are almost always going to be deceptive. And they don't realize their deception is to their demise. Help us to help you. But they will never give you the story, hardly ever.
Doctors go through that same thing all the time as well.
Your own health, but you wouldn't tell the doctor that you went and take 6 aspirin. But now you're crying. You're crying now that you're bleeding all over the place. You know, gosh, come down, man.
Just be honest.
It's for your good. We're working for a solution.
So you can get the animal away by spraying water in its direction and then doing whatever, because obviously something maybe you didn't clean up properly, so go ahead and see what it is. Maybe you caused the problem. Remove the attractant. We usually do something to attract them to our compound. But sometimes people are just have a nice place that's kind of secluded and quiet, and the animal's like, okay, we like it here. Nobody's harassing us. All right. So my last question is to go for both of you. I want both answers from both of you. Just really fun. But if this animal, Chase, this vulture, had a superpower, what would it be? You can't say the same thing. Okay, Donna? And Mr. Mead, actually, no, I will allow Donna to go. You want to go first?
What if he already has a superpower?
Tell me what it is.
Sass. He's sassy.
No, for real, he is. For real, he is. With that nose too, a little turn up head, yeah.
Yeah. That's a superpower.
He can like wave and get people to go away from him with some sass.
Yeah, definitely.
You're sassy, Chase? You're a sassy guy?
He's just a lot of character, yeah.
What about you, Mr. Mean? What's your superpower?
Well, vulture power. Chase and the turkey vulture, I just imagine them working with the police force to be able to detect cadavers or bodies in the forest. So one will be using its sight. These guys have amazing sight. Fly up there, Chase, we're looking for somebody, and they can help find them. The same way they sort of wanted to fly down and grab my wife. And then you have the turkey vultures with their nose. And from what reports are, their nose is probably at least 100 times better than the best cadaver dog that they could have. And the best cadaver dog's nose is like 1,000,000 times better than ours. So if there was a way to train turkey vultures to sniff out cadavers, so it wouldn't even only be cadavers above ground. With that level of nose, they would be able to find bodies in shallow graves quite easily also. So that would be, if we could get that across to be able to use that, it would be really, really amazing. That's their superpower.
Vulture power, I like it. His eyes are closing in and they almost go like it's gray. Is it his eyelid? Look at that.
Yeah,
Oh, that is unsettling.
Yeah, the one that comes like that, that's his third eyelid.
Third eyelid. Look at how many superpowers we're uncovering here.
Great. That one protects him. He has an upper eyelid and a lower eyelid, just like most normal animals, but that one there protects his eye when he has to get into little squabbles and so on to make sure he doesn't have his eye, because the eyesight are very important to them.
How long do they sleep for?
Chase doesn't count it.
Yeah, we're not checking him. He sleeps much more hours than regular vultures out there, but they are diurnal, so they would sleep during the night, regular hours during the night, And soon as 5 o'clock, they're out back there in the morning, but not Chase. Chase sleeps
all day, every day.
Yeah.
He's probably never leaving you guys.
Yeah. you want this to be pretty, so I need my beauty sleep. So we probably sleep 16 hours a day.
I've had many times where we took him on displays and stuff, and he would be on his perch, and that children screaming, people talking, and he would just, time to take a nap.
Oh, beautiful. In the midst of chaos.
Yeah.
All right. I'm going to go take a nap, guys.
I normally sleep at this time. Siesta.
One of my favorite things to say when I'm tired is it's nap o'clock.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's always nap o'clock with Chase. I get it. But he is adorable. I mean, he's a vulture, so I guess he's the most best looking, handsomest bird that they've ever had. But I like how calm he is. Very gentlemanly. Oh gosh, no, the flap.
We assume he's a male.
You assume he's a male?
Yeah, we assume he's a male. With vultures, you can't really sex them unless you do a DNA test. We have the opportunity to do the DNA test, to have it done, but, we just good with Chasey Boy. That's his nickname, Chasey Boy. Chasey Girl with song,
Next thing is like Chanel or something. If you'll find out it's a female, please name them Chanel.
Chanel,
anyway.
I'll keep that in mind.
So would he ever be released? Is that something he's in for?
So one of the reasons why we kept him was that the main reason why we kept him is because he's an imprinted bird. When we do rehab with wild animals, especially birds, they do something called imprinting. Imprinting is basically, if you rehab a bird, you need to keep your socialization with the bird to a very minimum. So, the only time the bird should see you is when it's time to get food, and even that too, you try, especially with raptors, because they are so, intelligent. Vultures are actually one of the most intelligent raptors. They have the ability to tell the difference between colors and whatnot. Right? So we try to eliminate that whole socialization process when we rehab a bird. But because Chase's case was different in that I had to, interact with him every day, hold him to put on that medication, hold him to tube feed him, and I went on for so long at a young age, he imprinted on me. So now he doesn't really, hence the reason why his character, he doesn't really see himself as a bird.
Oh.
He thinks he's one of us.
Yeah,
so that's imprinting. Another thing too is that, Ricardo mentioned that one of the adaptations that they have to survive out there is having a hook beak to help tear flesh apart.
Yeah.
He doesn't have that because of that beak deformity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
His beak is really interesting, though. I mean, even though I guess he's been through a lot, but it's made it quite beautiful.
Yeah. So I actually do have to keep trimming that beak because if I let it grow, you literally see it's literally like that, like crooked.
Aww. Poor Chase. Hi, Chase. I mean, like mostly sometimes the animals like they stare me down, or I could interact with them. But Chase is like, who's you?
Yeah. That's the personality I was talking about. Yeah.
Like I don't know who's you, and I don't care. I need to go nap. So, Akashana, I keep having questions. So, how often do you like feed
him?
Feed him, yeah.
Once a day.
Once a day, and it's quite a bit.
I would say so. His diet normally includes chicken neck. He loves chicken breast. He loves fish, but it has to be filleted. And boiled eggs.
Papa laps.
Yeah.
Okay, jeez. Papa laps. Okay, so
bougie much.
Bougie much. So what do you hope people take away from this episode of Wild Wednesdays about Kobos or about vultures?
She didn't mean that. She didn't mean that. She meant to say vulture.
That's why they're Kobos. That's why.
Yeah, you have to do air quotes.
Yes. But for people who maybe join late, why is it wrong to call them Kobos?
Kobo?
Yeah, right. Yeah, so we don't use that term Kobo because technically it's wrong. The term Kobo is a French term. When you translate it, it means a crow or a blackbird. So you could see the confusion when it comes to the putting that slang to the vulture. But each country has their different names for them. You could go to Jamaica and see it and say, hey, like a Kobo, and they're gonna be like, no, that's what do you call them, a Jan Crow?
Jan Crow.
Yeah. So each is more like a cultural thing. But I do hope that after today, part of the reason why I absolutely love introducing Chase to people is, the same reaction you had. I mean, I'm pretty sure you're going to leave today looking at vultures differently.
Way differently.
So yeah, like I said, education and, introducing Chase being an ambassador, Chase works really hard, He has his lazy days and stuff, but he works really hard when it comes to like going out there and meeting people, interacting with people. And, it actually leaves a lasting impression on people. Yeah.
So one thing one of the viewers says was, it's a comment, despite their occupation, they're quite clean animals.
Yeah.
Yes, indeed. Yeah. Yeah. So that term, that C word, that air quote, it's actually derogatory, and said in a derogatory. Nobody will ever say, hey, you're looking sharp in that black tuxedo, you're looking like a Kobo. You understand? They would never, and I actually, that for me, that would be a compliment. If my black tux and I look as slick and sharp as a black vulture, chic, but it's said and with the vitriol and nastiness behind it there, as it's derogatory. It has become a derogatory word, Oh, them Kobo here, and calling people from certain areas, but it's, it's sad. It's sad. It's an indictment of us as people here in Trinidad more than anything else. Don't say much about the bird. It's just us, and sure either we're just ignorant or we are within nasty. And want to put that out there.
So my top 3 takeaways would be, if you see them, leave them alone, respect them, let them do what they do. If they're probably in your way, maybe being a little inconvenient, use the hose, spray them a little bit of water if they're coming into your yard. And don't call them what they're not, which is a word we won't see.
It's not a crow. It's not a crow.
I mean, like, it doesn't like me, since I said that. So I'm so...
All right, yeah.
You're got a treat here, right here on the Prime on the base, and you're got a treat.
Yeah, we know when it's coming, as they say.
I'm so sorry for Mr. Sean Michael Small coming up. We're talking right next.
Just
of course, we're gonna do
Clorox.
Sponsor us. Yeah. All right, so that brings us to the end of Wild Wednesday on AM Prime on WESN. Thank you so much, Donna. Thank you so much, Mr. Mead, Mr. Ricardo Mead, for joining us today.
Thank you for having us as usual.
Thank you, Chase. Not even a look, not even some kind of attention. Thanks, Chase. No?
No. Like zoned out.
Nothing?
I'm zoned out. Zodi.
He loves Donna and nobody else.
Pretty much, yeah.
That's beautiful. All right, so as you know, you can always engage with us on WESN-CC, WESN-TV, on our Facebook, YouTube, on our website. Anywhere really you could go online, you could find us, or you can WhatsApp us. The WhatsApp number should be on your screen right now. You can always find either Naomi and I on Instagram at IamJadaMcLeod or Naomi McNish. So yes, our quote for today would be, "Today you are you, that is truer than true. There is no one alive who is youer than you." Can you guess who's that from? Who's that?
Dr. Susie. Correct.
Correct, you got it. I'm not saying it again, because I love Dr. Seuss. I think anybody that grew up liking literature or anything like that loves Dr. Seuss. "Today you are you, that is truer than true. There is no one alive who is youer than you." And cheers, there's no one alive who is youer than you.
That's for sure.
Right.
I agree with that.
Not even a compliment gets him to look my way. Not even a compliment. We love you,
Just
James.
extend the hand. Extend the hand. Yeah. No?
No.
Wow.
No. Wow, it's real.
You get rejected by a volunteer.
Doesn't get much lower than that.
Real style, you got to know me.
That means you're fresh. Take that how you want.
Yeah, I can't miss the meet ever, and I can. Anyway, so next week Wednesday we have Wild Wednesdays again, so stay tuned for that, and I will see you all tomorrow. Stay tuned on WESN for Talking Point with Mr. Sean Michael Small, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Bye.
WESN.
My name is Dr. Joanne Williams-Carroll, and I am the Director of Behavioral and Mental Health at the Community Hospital. At the Community Hospital, we believe in nurturing mind, body, and soul. Through our counseling and chaplaincy program, we will provide you with support and strength you need to help with your mental and emotional well-being. Give us a call.
The Community Hospital of Seventh-day Adventist,
where good private health care is affordable.
My name is Dr. Joanne Williams-Carroll, and I am the Director of Behavioral and Mental Health at the Community Hospital. At the Community Hospital, we believe in nurturing mind, body, and soul. Through our counseling and chaplaincy program, we will provide you with support and strength you need to help with your mental and emotional well-being. Give us a call.
the Community Hospital of Seventh-day Adventist,
where good private health care is affordable.
Take some time for yourself or spend some time with the family at Sandy Point Village Hotel. Enjoy our various studio and suite apartments, self-contained with their own kitchenettes and Wi-Fi. We also have our famous 100-foot swimming pool and our beachfront restaurant, the Steak and Lobster Grill. And our location in Crown Point puts us near the center of activity from the nylon pool to the local nightlife. Call us and make your reservations at 639-8533, 389-2378, or email us at sandypointvillagehotel@gmail.com.
Pastor J, I want to get a tattoo.
You really
respond
wanna-
to me.
respond to
me.
you?
How you would respond to me?
The first question I'd ask is why?
Controversial taboo topics.
We get so consumed by church, we forget that we have to live the life of being a Christian outside of the Sunday.
Like you say,
services.
we think going to a service makes us a Christian.
Exactly.
Yeah. Right. So here we are about to hear the second time Pastor J wanted to take a tattoo.
Would have been late last year and early this year.
Oh gosh.
Hope Unfiltered podcast with Pastor J and Ren. Our award-winning show is back, and this season promises to be even more exciting than before. What's Up, Doc isn't just a title, it's a call to action for anyone who wants to improve their health and well-being. Join us on this thrilling ride towards better health on WESN Content Capital.
As always, we appreciate you starting your day with us. Let's get into this morning's first conversation.
Is the country's healthcare system more at risk more than ever?
Why it has remained unaddressed for so long?
Political parties get lots of cash, big cash from financiers, and then when they get that now, you can't account for it.
But it's really the specialist nurses who we are in a greater shortfall for.
We can tap into the resources and have them, at least form some mentorship programs.
Highlight our food systems, and which will attract persons from all over the world to come and experience something that actually supports the local economy.
We're lucky that we have a vibrant legal system that allows change to take place, and it's not that matters are just swept under the carpet and discrimination is allowed to be perpetrated.
A lot of people don't know that there were attempts to ban the carnival, suppress the carnival.
FanZone, your reliable, authentic supplier, has just gotten better. You can now visit our website www.fanzonett.com for your authentic wear and collectibles. The only place where you can use both your Visa debit and credit cards. Visit our website fanzonett.com to make your purchase today.
My name is Dr. Stephen Carroll, the CEO at Community Hospital of Seventh-day Adventist, and we are committed to making good private health care affordable.
For all your medical needs, including dental, radiology, laparoscopy, behavioral and mental health, along with many other services, contact us for more information at 235-5479.
Community Hospital of Seventh-day Adventist,
where good private health care is affordable.
We are tackling the hard-hitting topics, some controversial topics, some topics we sweep under the rug. You don't always have to forgive in a relationship for it to move forward.
If it is you are in a situation where you forgive the person, but to the detriment of yourself, what are you really doing?
It is very uncommon for somebody in the younger age group to have dementia.
Atheists don't not believe.
Is that I can't disprove God, but you also can't prove God, so we kind of at a stalemate.
We'll focus on the woman who's being the victim,
right,
or the man who's being the victim. We exclude the children.
Folks are trying to study the underlying brain mechanism to figure out how does this particular disorder happen in the brain? How is the brain processing this?
Don't worry about AI, worry about humans working with AI.
Are you willing to learn new skills to stay relevant for the future job market? That's the challenge that people are going to struggle with.
This is 10 Questions. I'm Andy Johnson. The distance from where we should be in the world in going forward on our commitments with climate change.
The effects of climate change that cannot be accounted for, it's called loss and damage. And we're seeing loss and damage happening so much more in this decade and the previous decade.
The principal term there was this question of the correspondent banking issues.
That is why we're trying to build capacity with this country here, Trinidad and Tobago, and other countries in the region.
Man is not showing any signs of stopping or even slowing down. More than half of the forest in Trinidad is already gone.
All the plants and all the animals and all of the nice clean water and fresh air and everything had to be on this planet for humanity to have a chance.
We have small change when it comes to countries that can take decisions, and when they speak, the world listens.
The General Assembly is a very democratic forum. And Trinidad and Tobago has the same vote as Canada, in spite of the obvious difference in size.
Low energy? Heart concerns? Migraines slowing you down? It's time to take control of your health. Join Wellness Unlocked, the series that brings expert advice and real solutions for a healthier you. In our latest episode, learn how Jameson CoQ10 can help support heart health, boost energy, and even reduce migraines. Get the science, the stories, and the steps to power up your health with CoQ10. Don't miss Wellness Unlocked. Watch now on WESN and start your wellness journey today.
Every word, every line, every paragraph depicts a real moment in someone's life. A father, a sister, a mother, a brother. We at Newsday are dedicated to you, the people, and through independent, unwavering journalism, strive to always bring your stories to life. Because your stories are more than just words. Newsday, independent and credible.
This is Face of Sports, WESN Content Capital. How you felt about the kiss on the lip?
That's the business. I'm nothing to do with that.
I find that was distasteful.
The national senior team, whether you like it or not, that is the model for all other teams to follow.
I'm assuming that the regional requirement may be a much stricter requirement.
This is not about Pro League and Super League. This is a league run by the Normalization Committee that I'm responsible for.
Nobody expected FIFA to fund this arrangement.
If we don't get a professional attitude towards this, we are doomed for failure.
You break the balance, trip the leg, control the body.
They ain't gonna stand put forever.
Why you want the Chiefs to lose so? Why you want the Chiefs to lose so?
They already have two. Lamar don't
Why?
have.
You're jealous because you know the Chiefs getting closer to the Patriots. Let's go to the last part.
No,
of the
not no.
Let's go to the last part.
You are watching Strictly Legal on WESN Content Capital. Just give an overview of what exactly is that split arrangement.
Nah, you don't need to register nothing. We can do that another time. But then it becomes a hit, and then everybody starts to want to claim.
The laws that predate many of the independent countries' constitutions are going to be those colonial laws.
We know there are an infinite amount of circumstances that would lead to a murder.
I have a great idea and I have a great concept, but until it's actually expressed, it does not become intellectual property.
Accomplishments or targets of a forensic accountant is to quantify what may have been lost.
We believe we defend criminals and we manipulated the law and we exploited the system.
A responsible journalist will reach out to the person who they have the information on for a comment.
Money is something we all deal with, but how many of us truly understand it? What if you could make better decisions with your money? Decisions that secure your future, protect your family, and bring you peace of mind. I'm Darren Jacobs, and I'm here to help you make sense of your dollars. Welcome to Dollars and Cents, the show that breaks down the financial world in ways that matter to you. No jargon, no confusion, just real conversations about money, your money. So join me every Wednesday at 10 a.m. on WESN for Dollars and Cents.
WESN.
Sure, Michael Small here. This is Talking Point. A lot to get through. First thing I just want to hit on, and I'm a day or two late on this, but of course, I can't help but point out what to me is obvious and what doesn't seem to be obvious to a lot of people. The opposition leader, of course, she is confirmed, although she technically ran unopposed. So technically, no one voted for her. It's just one of those weird things where while yes, she has something of a mandate, to what extent does she really know how much support she has? Because the complaint was, since nobody ran against her, less voters came out. It's not like the PNM is in a major transition period that could potentially affect its future prospects moving forward. But one of the things that the opposition leader said, and it's one of those weird things where it annoys me, but it's hard to be annoyed with the opposition leader, at least on the surface of it. Because to what extent is this her fault, I don't know. But if you want to judge the PNM in its totality, the totality appears somewhat hypocritical. Because let's understand what the standard is. It's not to be only as good as the other side. And however low they go, it's justifiable to go low. No, the idea for both the UNC, the PNM, the TPP, and any other political entity, I would hope would be to be better. Now, addressing the party at its convention last week, she said something that it's in the totality of the perception of the party is hypocritical. Not that the opposition leader herself is hypocritical. Listen more. Let us debate respectfully. Let us include rather than exclude. And my immediate mental thought reading that was, well, you're not doing that. Well, you're not. What tends to happen is your MPs and senators, not all of them, but some of them, come across as though they're taking things very personally. And for the most part, have a very aggressive, antagonistic behavior that more often than not doesn't really align itself with any sort of practical or constructive criticism. The whole CPEP situation, for instance. They didn't speak about the whole CPEP situation, just merely the parts that were convenient. They didn't speak to the whole Stuart Young Prime Minister pension situation. There were so much things that if you were to be honest with the population, you would have had to account for a lot of different things. But whether you were afraid because you thought you couldn't do so, you had an inability to do so, or you just didn't think about it, which in many ways, I don't know which one is worse. You go into debates, and to some extent, at times the UNC did this as opposition, but I do wonder if they were so limited and so blatantly one-dimensional, depending on the issue, as how the PNM was with regards to the Prime Minister pension issue. We will conveniently not bring up any other pertinent piece of information that could indicate that a significant amount of this scenario is our fault. we will just conveniently use some very generic principles and apply them to the situation that sound nice in a vacuum, but really and truly the population isn't buying it. Because it's the population that was asking the questions. People in my life every day, not reading the remarks or listening to the remarks of politicians. Everyday people that was asking, he go get a prime minister's pension after that? That's it? That's all it takes for him to get a pension? That can't be right. Anyway. One more quote. This is a new era, new leadership, a renewed commitment. Join us, help us, hold us accountable, build with us. It's almost like if Penelope Beckles is in a bubble that most of her party is willfully ignoring. And I don't know if she knows that most of her party is seemingly willfully ignoring her. Because one, the PNM that's around her, because she wasn't as vocal as the rest, but most of the PNM around her never responded kindly to anybody holding them accountable. Number two, they're operating much the same way that they did when they were the least popular, that is to say, just before the election. They're continuing those behaviors. So how is it a new era? Number three, I just said it seems like they're ignoring you. So we had a question if it's really new leadership. To what extent are the hidden agendas undermining the opposition leader right before our eyes? I have no idea. But the disconnect between what she's saying, almost from the beginning of her time as leader of the opposition, how that's disconnected to most of the parliamentarians in the party, I have no idea. I have no idea how that is following the lead of the leader, following the messaging of the leader to then inform you on how you should craft your messaging. I don't see that. Maybe it's because no matter how experienced, from the relatively less experienced Stuart Young Farisawari to the infinitely more experienced Com Imbit, or in fact the least experienced Karim Marcel, somehow all of them seem to be doubling down on political amateurism. This is not going to reverse the fortunes of the party. A renewed commitment to what? Because that's what got you voted out. If you're doubling down on that, that's what it seems like. And again, I could be wrong, but Penelope Beckles, leader of the opposition, is saying all the right things, and her party somehow is either ignoring her, actively working against her, or is so inept that their listening and comprehension skills interpret when she says, hold us accountable, build with us, this is a new era, new leadership. When she says that, they're like, yes, it's a new era. We could be bigger idiots than last time, and somehow it'll work. I didn't want to say idiots, I want to say something else, but I can't. I have to refrain so I don't get fined. Another failure of messaging, or in this case, poor ordering. Minister of Public Utilities Barry Padra confirmed the 10,000 plus workers will receive 1 month's payment in lieu of notice. Now the question is, was that decision made after the backlash or before the backlash? And it's not necessarily better if it was before the backlash, right? If this was always the intention, that does not absolve them of ineptitude themselves, because it would have helped you to, I don't know, maybe include that in your opening statements. We're firing you, but we have this consolation prize, for whatever it's worth. As opposed to a day later, oh yeah, by the way, we forgot to tell you, we're giving you this. Please don't be mad. Somehow, I don't know if they didn't realize how bad the rhetoric could get. And listen, I am the first one that will say we need to curtail on government wage bill. I have been saying that for, I don't know, probably years now. But how you do it? Listen, I didn't like Ayla as commissioner. That doesn't mean I condone how they did what they did to her at the beginning of the year. That's not how you move on from a commissioner, no matter what you think of their job performance. This is not how you fire people as a government that's supposed to be for the people. Because when you win, everybody win, right? But you're starting to give the opposition, who is being an antagonist for the sake of antagonism for the most part, but it's a hell of a thing when they are being opposers for opposing sake, and you are like, yes, we will help you, Nostradamus, by proving what you say correct after the fact with our own unforced errors. Because I guess the political amateur hour is not limited to either side. It is true equality, where every creed and race and social demographic and political affiliation of our politicians find an equally inept place. Is that what we're going for? I don't understand. Are we playing tennis, you know? Are we trying to get everybody participation trophies? Is this what it is? That's the lives of 10,000 people that you just didn't think through. How is that winning? Quick thing, the Labour Minister wants a national living wage. You see, that sounds nice. A proper politician that is concerned with governance will not just say, I want a national living wage. He will start the conversation is, how do we define a national living wage? Because I mentioned that, I think it was earlier this week. You could have a minimum wage to allow an individual to support himself, or you could have a minimum wage to allow an individual to support a family of 4. That's 2 different wages. Now, should all jobs, no matter how unskilled, how entry-level, how transient, should all jobs afford as a single income to support a family of 4? 2 adults, 2 kids? Because that was, in some parts of America, the ideology. That was the working theory. That was what they were aiming for. And I don't think necessarily that was all that healthy. Now, if you now saying it should be a living wage for the middle class doesn't necessarily mean that a single one will support a family of 4. Maybe then it means 2 wages will support a family of 4. Like what most middle class jobs and middle income households have to do. But to what degree should safety nets afford people things that are outside necessities? And it might seem harsh, but raising a family in and of itself is not a necessity. And one would hope, hey, if you want to have a family, we should do things to encourage people to do more than just basic entry-level jobs. And then if you take the wages of such jobs and you put it at that high of a level, you're going to go towards the beautiful phenomenon of, well, we have entry-level jobs that need 5 years experience. Where do you get the experience? Oh, with entry-level jobs. How do you get the entry-level jobs? Oh, you need 5 years experience. Because the wage level is so high, you're no longer hiring people straight out of school, straight out of university to learn on the job. Because to some extent, some of the businesses, not all, but some, particularly small businesses, might not be able to afford it. They might not be able to afford the very young worker who could grow in the role and maybe either improve their position in the company or move on to a better job, depending on the prospects of the position. That's, to some extent, what could happen. I'm not saying it will, and that's why I say if you want to bring up the conversation of a living wage, you have to define what it is. What is the goal of a living wage? What do you mean by living wage? What is the economic point by which this wage is supposed to support people? Is it supposed to support a single parent household with a single child? A two-parent household with 2 children? A two-parent household with 6 children? Because at some point, there's going to be people who are going to say, well, it's not enough. It's not enough. It's not enough. Government needs to do more. But if you kind of shoehorn the economy to say, no, we're going to force a wage at this level, there is a point where it's going to be more negative than positive. I'm not saying it's totally negative, and that's why you have the conversation. But you know what? Clickbait headlines sound better. I didn't realize the UNC needed to regain ground on their public relations and have public relation wins so early in their time in office, but who knows? A couple more things quick. One, apparently the Commissioner of Police and Judiciary are going to be meeting over no guns policy in court. I don't necessarily know all the intricate details of why such policies exist. I only know that they exist in multiple jurisdictions around the world. So basically my question is, because a lot of people would say, well, you know, this is to protect the court, right? Why do police need to have guns in the court? And I guess what you might say is, why are you doubting our police officers? To which I will counter with, can anybody guarantee to me that all the police officers that go into the court have zero corruption or zero chance of corruption? Just saying. There's a reason why these things have been instituted the world over. And while you might say, oh, just because other people do it doesn't mean we have to do it, fair enough. But the flip side to that is, how hard is it for police officers to know, hey, if I'm going to court, I need to have some kind of provision of what to do with my firearm because they're not going to let me in with it. And if that's the issue, then maybe we should actually look at that issue. There's no provision to deal with officers who, I get it, you're working, you don't have time to just go to the station, to go to court and then go back to the station, particularly depending on where you're going to court and where your station is. But again, the problem would be you have a rule, the rule might be a good rule, but you do need to have logistical frameworks to make it practical. And if that's the case, talk about that. Because to some extent, I do find it kind of silly. You mean to tell me that, you know, police officers are so, they're like children, like you have to hold their hand. Oh, you don't know what to do with your gun? Oh, that's okay. We'll suspend your rule. Please, someone explain it to me more. I don't understand why this is a thing. It's not that I think this is a big issue. Rather, I think this just kind of makes the TTPS look kind of amateurish, to be honest. Being unable to work around something that is not just unique to us. I could be wrong. Last thing, I'll just mention it briefly because it doesn't really go into major details on the issue. But there was a file on the probe of DCP Martin. There was apparently a probe before, and the probe kind of came up clear, you know, nothing to see here. Funny that, because the report is that the complaint made somehow is a very different complaint. That's what the police are telling us. I can't remember if it was the commissioner that spoke on it or another senior police officer. But this new complaint from Brent Thomas is a very different complaint. Okay, cool. Apparently, the old file went missing. The previous file for the previous probe that said all clear. Apparently, I don't know if there's a new report that says they found the file, but apparently that file went missing. It's almost like if somebody doesn't want anybody else to scrutinize the contents of that file for some reason. I don't know. Maybe there might be questions as to how thorough was that probe, and if it wasn't thorough, then we could ask maybe if it wasn't thorough, why wasn't it thorough enough? It's almost like if maybe there might have been something funny going on there. That said, let's take a break. When we come back, we'll welcome the good lady, TTRA Today. Stay tuned.
Feeling drained? Struggling to keep up? It's time to take control of your wellness. On this episode of Wellness Unlocked, we're diving into the key nutrients your body needs for all-day energy and balance, with 100% or more of your daily essential vitamins, plus added chromium to support healthy blood sugar. This is complete wellness in a single soft gel. Join us as we uncover how small changes can make a big impact on your health. Don't miss Wellness Unlocked. Watch now on WESN and take the first step toward better health.
Bill and Ruth fell in love with the Benjamin Moore Color Dry Sage, but they tried to match it using another brand's paint.
I mean, it's close enough.
Almost identical, really. Yeah, there it is.
Never trust another paint to be a Benjamin Moore Color.
This is 10 questions. I'm Andy Johnson. The distance from where we should be in the world in going forward on our commitments with climate change.
The effects of climate change that cannot be accounted for, it's called loss and damage, and we're seeing loss and damage happening so much more in this decade and the previous decade.
The principal term there was this question of the correspondent banking issues.
That is why we're trying to build capacity with this country here, Trinidad and Tobago, and other countries in the region. Man is not showing any signs of stopping or even slowing down. More than half of the forest in Trinidad is already gone.
All the plants and all the animals and all of the nice clean water and fresh air and everything had to be on this planet for humanity to have a chance.
We have small change when it comes to countries that can take decisions, and when they speak, the world listens.
The General Assembly is a very democratic forum. And Trinidad and Tobago has the same vote as Canada, in spite of the obvious difference in size.
Do you need treatment for obesity or any related abdominal procedures? The community hospital now offers minimally invasive laparoscopic surgery done by an American-trained, board-certified surgeon with over 20 years' experience. Give us a call at 235-5479 for more information.
The Community Hospital of Seventh-day Adventist,
where good private health care is affordable.
We are tackling the hard-hitting topics, some controversial topics, some topics we sweep under the rug. You don't always have to forgive in a relationship for it to move forward.
If it is you are in a situation where you forgive the person, but to the detriment of yourself, what are you really doing?
It is very uncommon for somebody in the younger age group to have dementia.
Atheists don't not believe.
Is that I can't disprove God, but you also can't prove God, so we kind of have a stalemate.
We'll focus on the woman who's being the victim,
right,
or the man has been the victim. We exclude the children.
Folks are trying to study the underlying brain mechanism to figure out how does this particular disorder happen in the brain? How is the brain processing this?
Don't worry about AI, worry about humans working with AI.
Are you willing to learn new skills to stay relevant for the future job market? That's the challenge that people are going to struggle with.
I am Dr. Delphina Ovid, your friendly neighborhood dentist. At Community Hospital Dental Clinic, we offer examinations which include x-rays, basic oral cancer screening, and a treatment plan. We also offer cleanings, fillings, extractions, root canal treatment, and complete and partial dentures. Remember, you don't have to brush and floss all your teeth, just the ones you want to keep.
Give us a call at 235-5479.
The Community Hospital of Seventh-day Adventist,
where good private health care is affordable.
Take some time for yourself or spend some time with the family at Sandy Point Village Hotel. Enjoy our various studio and suite apartments, self-contained with their own kitchenettes and Wi-Fi. We also have our famous 100-foot swimming pool and our beachfront restaurant, the Steak and Lobster Grill. And our location in Crown Point puts us near the center of activity from the nylon pool to the local nightlife. Call us and make your reservations at 639-8533, 389-2378, or email us at sandypointvillagehotel@gmail.com.
The Trinidad and Tobago Revenue Authority, a topic that I do suspect most people are underestimating its importance, because what started off as, and we're not talking 2 years ago, we're not talking 5 years ago, we're talking all the way back during the Manning administration, so that's what, 15 plus years ago. It started out then as a part of several measures to try to deal with certain things, to try to improve certain aspects of how government did its business. And now, 15 years later, I fear it has devolved into this political football. I don't even know if the debate actually includes any pertinent and practical information of any significance that matters at all with regards to the actual details of what is needed or not needed, what is done or what was not done, what was proper or what was not proper. It's just turned into a political issue where it seems as though I don't think we're going to get a good solution one way or the other, whether it's repealed or even if it was kept at this point. And to speak about the matter, someone who was there all the way back then in the beginning, so she has a relatively unique perspective to offer that most of the modern day politicians can't. We have the good lady herself. Well, you're not active today, right? The current crop of newbies, you know what I mean?
All right.
All right, you know, former Minister of Finance, Senior Law Kindness, Cheryl.
Okay, yes, in a way, Sean is correct, but it even predates me, so I just want to make... Oh God, we're going back that far? Right.
No, because then it's kind of sad that if it's that old, it's like how many governments just could not get this thing.
Okay, so I think I will try to address it, because he's right that I do have a personal, let's say, a lens on that issue, because the original version of the Revenue Authority, which was passed in 2010, it was passed in the lower house, but Mr. Manning, as Prime Minister, dissolved Parliament and called elections early, and as a consequence of which that bill that was approved in the Parliament fell by the wayside. So what person spoke about now is the version that required a simple majority. So let me just backtrack a little bit. So it has, first thing I want to say is that the Revenue Authority took both the Customs and Excise Division as well as Board of Inland Revenue, which together combined are responsible for about 90% of the government's revenue. So when the government speaks about the revenue issues that they have, and they are real, one wonders why one would, a low-hanging fruit like the Revenue Authority, which has the potential, at least in the short to medium term, to help the government to raise the revenue that is hemorrhaging because of tax evasion. And that is the issue there. And before I go on to speak a little bit more about it, you know, one of the things is just by happenstance, I met a gentleman who I think would be considered among the middle working class. Then he said, you know, well, you know, I never really understood it, you know, and they made us believe that the Revenue Authority was something we should be afraid of. No, you don't have to be afraid of it. Who has to be afraid of it is persons who are working for high incomes and the business community who have been very silent regarding its repeal. Because if you're working for $7,500 or more, you pay no taxes. So you're under the radar of the tax authorities. Furthermore, even if you're working for $10,000, you're probably claiming a mortgage, you're probably claiming child, you know, you have children at university or whatever it is. And so you're really not the persons it was targeting. The 10 billion is not you. The 10 billion is the persons who fall into the high income bracket and who are the business community who have been thunderously silent on the issue. And that should tell you a lot. So that's the first thing I want to say on the matter. Now, I said it predated me because in 2002, the Manning government, together with appointed or retained Gordon Dean, who was a former president of the Chamber of Commerce at the time, Industry and Commerce, with government officials to look at the potential of establishing another entity rather than the Board of Inland Revenue and the Custom and Excise. And this is the report they gave. And so you'll understand why, anyway, as I will continue to see, that the issue is really an HR issue, which by abandoning the Revenue Authority is really unfortunate and really is a backward step, a retrograde step, given that this government now has the same 3/5 majority which allowed us, that is the Manning government of 2007 to 2010, to implement and to enact, in the lower house at least, the version of the Revenue Authority which was far more effective and the one that was currently appealed, but that is because the government of the day did not have the 3/5 majority to be able to implement the version that was initially enacted by the Manning government, which had the 3/5 majority. So I just want to put that on the table. So these were the things that they found. They said deficient human resource management processes, inadequate management capability, accountability, and training, inadequate staff development, training, and accountability, lack of control over and accountability for budgetary allocations, inadequate employee compensation packages, high incidence of corruption and corrupt practices, poor customer relations, anti-business rules and regulations, lack of appropriate information technology. The one that I want to say, inefficient system for internal investigation and enforcement, poor physical infrastructure and accommodation. So these are some of the things that they highlighted. And when they dealt with customs, customs was really, the role of customs was really to deal with monitoring the goods that came into the country and goods that came out, and also to look, be part of the whole national security apparatus in a sense, in terms of monitoring what came into the country, which we're dealing with the drug trade, right? Let's get real. Well, at that time it was more drug trade, and at that time it was more that. So there's no doubt that that was it. I was the minister then, and I can assure you that the motive behind the TTRE had a lot to do with the inefficiencies, as well as the fact, because of the fact that the Board of Inland Revenue and Customs were part of the public service, that you were really stymied in order to deal with those issues. In fact, the United States Customs and Excise were helping us, because it was acknowledged that a large issue dealt with the Board of Inland Revenue and Customs was the issue of illegal drugs, and the fact that many of the things that came in and out, a lot of corruption. That was a reality, whether one wants to admit it or not. So what have we done now? What have we done now? What we have done is take a retrograde step, because the major reason why a revenue authority, at least in our case, would have been set up, is to take the revenue authority outside of the public service and put it into as almost a semi-autonomous private sector in a sense, but with government oversight, and government was responsible for general policy and so on, and to take it out of that. And what would it do? One of the positives of working in the government service, I lived in the government service for 5 years, is that the security of tenure. But the backside of that, or the negative of the security of tenure, is that you can't fire people easily. You cannot, the Police Service Commission is responsible for hiring, discipline, promoting, and transferring. And the reality is that it is extraordinarily difficult, not only in Trinidad, in other countries that have a similar model, to ever discipline a public service. So in exchange for a salary that may not be so attractive as the private sector is, in exchange for that, you are offered security of tenure. And what is the consequence of that? It allows, I'm not saying that, but it facilitates the same thing that we are concerned about. Because what the Revenue Authority was going to do was set up a human resource management system. They were going to allow, you had to now, so that persons who applied would have to have the requisite skills and capabilities and pass whatever requirements that the authority required. And then the seniority would disappear. It would be meritocracy based on your performance, and the ability to hire, ability to promote would not be stymied as it was in the public service, which is a reality. And the other thing about it is, in the 3/5 version, all of the public servants went into this new authority. And one of the key issues was enforcement. If you notice, in the version that was put before the current version, said that the directors or Director General of Enforcement who remain in the public service, and any officer, any person working in that division would be public servants, and therefore they would be still, that PSA would then be their bargaining union. So the reality was the first model had everybody in this new entity, and what it did is that persons who worked in the enforcement division, which is a critical division, would have to be specifically tested and determined that they were a good fit, and they would have to, just like it's SORT, they'd have to go through testing for lie detector testing as also money laundering, because that was the key division where, that we felt that needed to be monitored more than others. And that's what it was going to do. And so it was going to help with the drug trade. It was going to help with the money laundering. It was going to help with the collection of revenue, which the persons who were most affected by that was not you and the man in the street. It was the business community. And you notice they're very silent. They're very, very silent. And the persons who are working for high incomes. Those are the people that, and there you would get some equity in the system, because then they would pay the amount that they should pay, and instead of complaining about foreign exchange, complaining about this, maybe they need to make a contribution, but that has gone by the wayside. It has gone by the wayside, because what has happened now, and let me just go to the critical issue, because this is not Karen Teixeira giving her opinion. This is a very well-known case for anybody who follows this matter, and that's the case of Teresa Doré versus the Attorney General of Trinidad and Tobago. She brought the matter against the Attorney General, saying that implementing or establishing a revenue authority was unconstitutional, because he argued that the core functions of the revenue authority was the collection and payment of taxes was a core function of public officers and could not be carried out by persons who now would be considered private persons. So it went to the Court of Appeal, and the Court of Appeal took the view that it's not a core function, it's a non-core function. So they lost on that, but that's not the key. You have to look at now it went to the Privy Council, you can't get any further than that. And Lady Simler, who delivered the judgment on a unanimous decision, a judgment on behalf of I think it was 5 Privy Councillors, said, the non-core function that was the basis of the Court of Appeal's decision to say that dismissing Teresa Doré's appeal was not how they looked at it. And it would really be good if person read it. And the reason, which is key, in the judgment and also the summary of the judgment, it says the real issue is whether the protection that is given to public servants by Chapter 9 of the Constitution with the establishment of the Public Service Commission, insofar it relates to public officers. In this case, there's the Teaching Service Commission, there's the Police Service Commission, but we're dealing with the Public Service Commission. Chapter 9 of the Constitution established the Public Service Commission, and the purpose of that was to shield or immunize public servants from any kind of executive or political interference in the discharge of their duties, because the responsibility for hiring, firing, disciplining, transferring fell on behalf of the Police Service Commission, which was appointed by the President after consultation with the Prime Minister and the Leader of the Opposition. So the point is, she says that, so the rationale, she said in the summary, it stated the rationale for Chapter 9 of the Constitution protection is twofold. First, the independent service commissions provided by the Constitution are composed and structured to ensure that public officers are independent and immune from public pressure. So that is the purpose of that Chapter 9, having the Police Service Commission. The purpose of giving public officers security of tenure and protection from political interference in decisions on appointment, transfer, and promotion is to protect them from political influence or interference, which would otherwise be vulnerable by the government of the day. The second reason is the public are protected from the effects of such political interference by having a cadre of public servants who can act independently of any particular government. So she's saying that that is the reason for the Police Service Commission. And that is why when you're in the public service, that's why the Police Service Commission was so critical to public servants to give them that protection. So then she said no, and she looked at this as a unanimous decision, so she's speaking on behalf of all the law lords, Privy Councillors. So then she had to determine whether, in fact, there was good reason to believe that the Revenue Authority would take away the protection that the Police Service Commission under Chapter 9 of the Constitution provided them. And she looked at that. So she said, since the rationale of Chapter 9 is to protect public officers and indirectly members of the public from improper political interference by virtue of the fact that they are part of the government, she said, if the function performed by such officers is removed from government and put into the hand of a separate statutory body, which would be the Revenue Authority, there's no longer any need for these protections, provided two conditions are met. And you can look at the paragraph 76 to 84 of the judgment, and it will deal with it. The two conditions are satisfied. First, the separate statutory body, which would be the Revenue Authority, must be genuinely independent and not a device or a sham. The second reason is there must be adequate and effective safeguards to ensure that there's independence and sufficient protection for employees from political interference from the executive. And this is how they ended it. In this case, both conditions are met. There is no suggestion that the creation of the authority was a device or a sham, and there are effective safeguards to protect the staff and officers of the authority and members of the public from executive interference. Accordingly, the Act is not inconsistent with the Constitution. And that's very important because originally the Court of Appeal took the core non-core argument, which Dory had put forward. They said, no, we're not dealing with that. This is not about core non-core. The question is, if you take them out of the public service and put them in the Revenue Authority, is that a device or the sham? And secondly, does the authority provide sufficient protection from political interference, which the Police Service Commission would have done under the public service provisions? And they're satisfied that it gave them all the protection. So what is the reason? What is the reason for taking them out? I know the reason. We all know the reason, right? And you cannot have the tail hanging, wagging the dog. Because in this case, it is clear. Leave it alone. It is clear that persons who would have been let's see who would be most affected by the Revenue Authority coming into effect. The PSA, because they lose a lot of their membership. That does not mean they cannot go back to the industrial court under the special tribunal and ask for recognition certification and something board to get themselves recognized once they have more than 50% of the members in the bargaining unit that they intend to set up. They have lost about 2,000 members if the Revenue Authority came into effect, but they could apply to be the recognized majority union, but they would have lost it, that's for sure. And that's a lot of membership that they would have potentially lost. And who else would benefit from that? Let's be real. It's the business community, because they're the ones who have the ability to, and the persons in high income brackets, who are the ones that are the persons who one has to be considered about. So who benefits from this? I mean, it is really a matter of great concern. And one last thing which I had mentioned to Sean when we talked yesterday was the method of transition. I happened to go back to an old article from the papers, 2010, I picked it up. And you want to?
No, just with regards to, because that's one of the things, one of the big questions, because I guess the union, you could say, made it feel as though we're going to be losing jobs. With regards to the intentions of the original legislation, what was the intention behind it? Was it to get rid of the jobs and force the transition, or how was it set up to be?
Okay, that's a good question. I just want to say it was never intended to be that. There were so many, I just have to say that as an anecdote, but it was important. A lot of the persons who worked in either entity were happy for this new entity. Why? Because finally they'd have meritocracy. Finally they would be promoted based on their ability and not based on seniority. So a lot of them who are hardworking, who are ambitious, and there are many of them, let me just say for the record, very competent persons who were happy to have the Revenue Authority. But the original incarnation or iteration of the Revenue Authority, which I was part of, in 2010, was because we had a 3/5 majority to bring it wholesale again from the Inland Revenue and Customs into this Revenue Authority. So initially, I know in 2002 it started, and there were, I know the consultants, Canadian consultants were were retained, and there were members of the public service, the deputy permanent secretary, to be correct, who was involved in that. And so the former minister in the ministry, Conrad O'Neill, had started the whole ball rolling. So I have to say, when I came in, I inherited something that was already well on its way. But when we were able to do this, to implement this legislation, there was initially this view that we should shut down both Inland Revenue and Customs. And of course, that caused untold, and in my view, unnecessary discord. I mean, they were marching, understandably, and Mr. Watson Jew was the head of the PSA, and it was already, in my view, a necessary decision to have taken, but that's cabinet. And then we eventually came to what we have now, and what was eventually agreed to, even in Mr. Manning's time, and now under the former administration, which is to do it in three ways to do the transition. Either you have to apply, so we can hire and determine if you're a good fit. Secondly, if you didn't want to come over, take VSEP, which would have been very attractive. Or if you didn't want either of those, look to place you in another ministry at an equal position and salary as far as that was possible. But you see, we understand, and I do understand, why the public service would have been up in arms against it, and some officers would have been up against it. I understand that. But you cannot have the tail wagging the dog. You know, I am taking this position not to be unpopular with anybody, but I think somebody needs to speak out. And somebody needs to tell the national community that the decision in 7 weeks to repeal the Revenue Authority without any kind of real consideration of the importance of it and what difference it would have made to the country, indeed, not only in revenue collection, but indeed with the money laundering and the drugs that in this country. Right? And I know I don't mean the illegal drugs, I mean the illegal ones. And that I know the Prime Minister, I believe the Prime Minister is committed to that. I do believe that. The Homeland Security and dividing the national security into two divisions and have them in the same office, and what you're seeing happening, I do believe that. But I also believe that this decision was very much determined by the public servants who supported the government while it was going up. I mean, I understand that was something that was promised to them. So I understand that. But is that right? Is that right for the country? When you're telling me we don't have revenue, when you're telling me a big problem with the crime, the root of crime is money laundering and drug trade. I mean, why do this? I do understand it. And you know what is even more unfortunate? That is, this government has the 3/5 majority. So they don't have to have anybody no director of enforcement in the entity, in the authority. They could do what we had done, which is everybody went over. And enforcement, you couldn't work in the enforcement division unless you passed certain tests. And understandably, it was to protect the country. It wasn't protect any individual. It was the country, and that was the motivation. At that time, even though people don't want to give the recognition to Mr. Manning, he was doing a lot, whether it was the Gambling Commission, whether the Revenue Authority, whether it was SORT, whether it was FIU. All of those things were measures to deal without shooting a gun, to deal with the major root of our crime, which was money laundering and the drug trade. And I'm not telling you that just like that. I was a minister. I was Minister of Finance. So please, I was there long enough to understand that was the motivation. So to see this happen, I really had to speak out. I couldn't stay quietly and not say anything about it. It's up to people. Read Teresa Doré. It's only September 2024 that the decision was delivered, but it's a very good, comprehensive judgment, which gives you the whole background. And you have to ask yourself, who is wagging this dog? Who is doing that? I mean, is that in the interest of the country? No, it cannot be.
So I need to ask, first of all, have you seen any real practical arguments with merit from the government side to explain or justify this? Because when I say justify, not just if there was issues with the TTRA, one would imagine, well, maybe, especially with a 3/5 majority, you should have an easy time fixing it if you so chose. But of course we know, and I've said it before, to some extent, politically you understand, they campaigned on this, they promised this, so it's kind of hard for them not to deliver on it. But the flip side is, I feel as though with a lot of other things, we have to wait and see. We have to examine. We have to find out what's going on. But with the TTRA, they just, day one, they came in. Yeah, let's get rid of this thing. You know, we didn't wait and see. We didn't look and explore and do fact finding. We just predetermined decision. Is there any practical arguments on their side for it that you know of?
Well, I mean, I think they're saying that they will fix the issues within the Board of Inland Revenue and Customs. But the problem is that as the decision of the Privy Council so clearly identified, you can put in the best systems in place. You can use the best information technology that you want. But at the end of the day, it's a people's issue. And it's not to say that the people inside Board of Inland Revenue or Customs are more, any of them, and I don't think many of them are, but you only need one apple to spoil the whole bunch. So that's, you know, I want to understand. I don't want to make enemies with the PSA because I do support unions in terms of their advocacy and so on. Don't get me wrong, within reason. But I'm just saying that clearly it was a human, as the Gordon Teen report indicated, not demonstrated. It is an HR issue, and the HR issue stems from the protection given to public servants under the Chapter 9 of the Constitution, which is the security of tenure. And I have already said on another occasion, I think on this program, or maybe another one, I personally experienced it. I mean, I had an officer who was, I mean, I would say insubordinate to me, you know, and deliberately did not follow my instructions. And I complained about it, and I was told to leave it alone. And I said, why? He said, because you're going to waste your time. By the time you go through getting statements, getting things, and then going through the whole process of the Public Service Commission and the appeal board, you're just going to frustrate yourself. And, you know, and I let it go. It's not that I want to. And by the way, I had nothing personally against the person. I just did my job, and you're not cooperating. So that's what I'm interested in, do your job. You know, and so I know that I had a personal experience with it. It was really very frustrating for me to deal with that. So, and I worked in the public service myself for 5 years. So don't say that I'm against.
When you say you worked in the public service,
Chief State Solicitor.
Right, separate to the time as minister. So
yes,
you
when I now
were
started.
Actual public servant.
Yes, for 5 years.
Right, yeah.
You know, so I'm not against, don't get me wrong, you know, I know it's a hard position for me to have articulated and ventilated because there are a lot of people who remain silent and they know what I'm saying is true, including the public service, I believe.
Would you say it's fair? Because this is just one of those things that everybody knows and everybody complains about. But yet now, when it's time to actually commit to doing anything about it, all the crocodile tales is like, oh my gosh, how you can treat people so, and isn't that so bad?
That's another thing, and I forgot to mention,
because
sorry.
It's just as point out,
yeah.
It's not just unique to Customs and Board of Inland Revenue. This is across the board, right? I have even said you could include police,
exactly,
Coast Guard, regiment in things like this, ministries, etc. Go ahead.
And that is, yes, and you made me remember, triggered that, if that's the right word to use, Gordon Draper in 2003 published a paper on civil service reform. At that time it was called civil service until he got the Republican Constitution and became public servants. But it's still the Civil Service Act. But the point about it is that there has been conversation, talk about reforming the public service. So it's not a problem just of the public, it's any teachers, all the things, all the issues, and it's not directed. I mean, it's a system that facilitates that. And you're going to allow the system to stay in place. So coming back to what you asked me, you could put the best system and structures in place, but at the end of the day, it's people that have to operate it. And if you do not put in place a structure and organization that allows it to function efficiently and effectively, the people of this country, you're spinning top in mud. And I don't know that they ever articulated anything that allowed them to run and shut down this revenue authority without doing the necessary work. And I think it'd be very difficult. And I end by saying, I don't think that you could say it better than Lady Simler, who, by the way, was the same Privy Councillor who gave the judgment in Jawanti Ramdi. Yes, right.
And another case that I keep forgetting.
Yes, she did that thing. So I think why I'm mentioning is she seems to have a good understanding of Trinidad's culture more than the other judges. I just assume that because I think she's got a good understanding of us, and so she was very clear about what she said. Don't tell me about core functions. Chapter 9 of the Police Service thing, the Revenue Authority gives them enough protection. It's not a divisorship. So what's your argument?
Yeah,
it has no value.
She's made multiple decisive judgments that I don't think anyone could criticize that it was out of touch with the country and out of touch with our culture. Now, a couple of things. One, the government hasn't given us any real details on the alternatives that I've seen. One of the things that I remember
7 weeks, I don't think they could.
I mean, right, but again, you're making the initial decision half-cocked, right? So it just kind of, that's my concern, that they're not really prepared and thorough before they made this decision. Now, you mentioned something interesting earlier, that I find it actually on a practical level isn't always the case, that public servants get tenure because the salaries might not, the compensation might not be quite as good. Well, here's at least one anecdotal example that flips that on its head. From what I understand, private teachers, at least in some cases, not all private schools, right, might actually be paid less than public teachers, and they don't have the tenure. So it's one of those things where, and this is the key, somehow for these teachers, they actually decided, you know, I won't have the security of tenure, and I won't have as high a compensation, but I still rather teach here than go into the public sector for whatever reason. And I'm not talking fancy schools. I'm not talking fancy schools, right? So it's just one of those things where, I don't know, in not all cases, but in some cases, obviously like doctors and the like, they're not being paid as much as private doctors. But in some cases, they ain't all that disadvantaged to the private sector. And we have to ask ourselves, how is it that people are willing to take less money in some jobs to work private and not to work public? But the last thing I wanted to ask you about this, and the amateur historian in me, I've been talking about the parallels with the 2010 situation, and this is another parallel to me, because you brought it up before. All of the legislations that the Manning administration had that basically kind of was thrown by the wayside for whatever reason, whether it's the partnership or it's stalled or what have you. And now we have a similar situation that we saw where this is a PNM, the last administration kind of took on the baton, for better or worse, right, to implement the general concept for better or worse, and the current administration has kind of discarded it. How do you feel about that? Because it makes me think part of this is just the same old politics. Well, it's a PNM piece of legislation traditionally, so we don't really want to fight for it. We don't really want to take it on.
I don't think so in this case. I think it was a done deal that they were going to do it, and in fact, with the PNM version, the second version, they did not have the 3/5 majority, which is why, and in fact, in the Privy Council decision, and the government did acknowledge that there were issues regarding the Director General of Enforcement, which would have stayed with the public service, because there's a lot of overlap between his responsibilities and those persons who were in the Revenue Authority and were subject to the Revenue Authority. So they didn't, but the Privy Council said, look, we're not asked to deal with that issue. I don't think it was that. I think there was a commitment to shut it down. They did it very quickly, no explanation, and nobody from the business community made a lot of, they didn't have anything to say about it, so that tells you something. And so for those of you who are from the lower income, or not in the high income, because 7,500, 10,000, you know, it's not you they're after. It's not you. It's not you. Okay? So that reminds me of the gambling thing, which was another thing that they had to water down with the 3/5, because they didn't have the 3/5. But now this government has it, so this is an opportunity for them to write a lot of things that would help, in addition to what the Prime Minister is already doing, in strengthening our fight against the money laundering and the drug trade. Because that is at the root of it. I'm not saying it's all, but all that gang, what the gangs when they're coming together to sing Kumbaya, you know what I mean? Let's be real.
It is somewhat telling with regards to the ills of society that you're basically speaking about, well, 15 years ago we had these plans. 3 terms of a government.
That is
later, we have not really made any headway on almost any of it.
And that seems, you know, you have to think it was deliberate. You have to think. If, and I'm not saying it in any way, but this is what I would say. Yes, I did say that the Revenue Authority concept and so on predated me, and the consultants who gave the advice were the same consultants who were retained by the previous administration of the PNM. But what I will say, if in 2.5 years we could pass legislation in the lower house because Mr. Manning called the elections early. Remember, that was what he did. Why it took you 10 years to not have implemented that revenue? Every year you read it in your budget. Every year you talk about the Gambling Commission. Every year you talk about the national thing. You have to come to the conclusion that that was deliberate, because you cannot tell me in 10 years, transfer pricing, National Statistical Institute, Gambling Commission, the Revenue Authority, all these major, the DPP understaffing, you cannot tell me that that was not in some way deliberate. You cannot say that to me. It's too many years. And that's why we are where we are today.
There's the phrase, who benefits? The question, who benefits?
Exactly.
Right? Now, with that said, we'll transition for what little time we have left. Who benefits? Well, there was a man on a separate issue that says, I didn't do it for my benefit. It's just that I don't know if anybody believed him. I don't even know if his own party believed him, but they tried to defend him, right? But I mean, you know, it was quite flagrant that, you know, Stuart Young was poised to benefit from a pension that they had the debate, it's been taken away. Now there's a report this morning that his security detail has been taken away, I guess because he doesn't really qualify as a former prime minister.
Yeah, but I don't want to go down that route, because, you know, I don't want to...
I will say this, though. I've seen more security details in the current administration, even though the prime minister said we're not going to have so much excess security. So I do wonder if it was Minister Young driving around this constituency. Anyway, that's besides the point. But with regards to the pension and how that whole thing came up.
Right, because with regard to the security detail, I mean, it's difficult not to think that there's some level of, you know, it is questionable. So I'm not going to go, and I try not to get into areas which, first of all, I don't really have enough information, and I'm just going to deal with the Prime Minister's Pension Act. And the reason I decided to say something on it was because the PNM opposition really had no argument that could stand up to scrutiny, which was, it was vindictive and spiteful. You know, well, let's put it this way. Let's assume there was a level of vindictive and spite in what the current government did. But my goodness gracious, Mr. Stuart Young, you cannot think that accepting a Prime Minister's pension after acting one day was something that was acceptable to the people of Trinidad and Tobago. And there was a public outcry, quite apart from the PNM not being able to vote against it. That was very telling. And Mr. I, who says that he is for the country, where were you in the parliamentary debate? If you felt there was merit in what you did, you were Prime Minister at one time, very short period, truly. But the point about it is, if you felt there was merit in what you did, if they felt it was correct, come and defend your position. Your absence was noteworthy, and the fact that none of your colleagues could vote against it was also telling. So let me make the point that I really want to make with regard to that. The point is, I do not think that anyone in 1962 and going forward could have thought that the Prime Minister's Pension Act would be abused in the way it was. No one could have thought about it. I think it was beyond the realm of persons' contemplation. And so, for Stuart Young, I think he was the trigger to let them say, as in many amendments, acts are amended all the time, because something happens that you may not have contemplated, which requires you now, oh, we got to look at this again, and we've got to deal with it. That's what you did.
Because it's the first time.
It's the first time, and not only that it was the first time, it was so outside the realm of persons contemplating it. I think people were taken aback. And why do I say that? Number one, come on, Mr. Stuart Young. You had to have been part and parcel of what went on. Number one, your former Prime Minister, Rowley, made it very clear to the national community that you were the chosen one. There was a whole brouhaha regarding your selection, not election, from senior members of the party when you were made a member of Prime Minister, short-lived though it be. And it was very telling that the then former Prime Minister did not give up his post as political leader. And I am just assuming, because as he has said, the political leader is very important in relation to the selection of persons for constituencies. So anyone who wanted to be in that parliament, who were not favored by Mr. Dr. Rowley, or who he had concerns about, would be well advised to shut up and not have anything to say about Mr. Young becoming Prime Minister. But it was clear that he was not a chosen one by the MPs. It all devolved. So you had to have known that. And what you had to have known, you could not tell me the day after you became Prime Minister, you got up midnight and said, oh, you know what, I'm going to call elections the next day. You're not going to, who's going to believe that? It had to be that was a well thought, and you're a lawyer. And you had to have seen that the Prime Minister's Pension Act made no provision for how long you need to serve. So it didn't matter, and so that doing it in one day is so obscene, so morally reprehensible on your part, because you cannot say you were a spectator. You cannot say that. You were part and parcel of what happened. You knew very well that the legislation was silent in regard to that matter, and on the face of it, the legislation allowed you to get the enhanced pension as a former Prime Minister, knowing you're only going to be there for a day and then lead us into the election. You knew you had, I mean, if you didn't know it, it's hard to believe that you didn't know it. It's not believable. So the government taking the position of going retroactive, yes, they had to do it. And then they didn't just make it retroactive, the amendment, but they set out the circumstances in which one would be able to qualify for Prime Minister's pension and put out a tiered system. That's a good thing. The only thing I would say is this. If you were the Prime Minister and you got ill, even within 1 year, this is not, you didn't create that situation. You didn't want that situation. People could understand that if you got ill after 7 or 8 months and you had to resign as Prime Minister, I don't think it would be the same thing as when it seemed as though you were part and parcel of something that would have deprived the taxpayers of this country to have to force them to accept something that was reprehensible. I mean, morally bereft. I mean, I feel so strongly about it. So in order to make it retroactive, they had to get a 3/5 majority. They just need to know that Section 13(1) of the Constitution even says that although it meets the requirements of the 3/5 majority, they still have Section 13(1) says that it shall have effect according unless the act is shown to be not to be reasonably justifiable in a society that has a proper respect for the rights and freedoms of the individual. So he may challenge it. I don't think he should, but he may challenge it and say, I have to weigh the public interest against my individual rights. I don't think you'll win that battle somewhere, because I think most people think what happened was morally reprehensible, as I've said already. So I don't think he'll win that argument as to say, well, even though it met the 3/5 majority requirement, Section 13(1) of the Constitution still says we can still challenge it. And as the current Attorney General, which I think he did a good wind-up actually on it, he really did. He mentioned Surat versus the Attorney General, paragraph 58. And what it says is that basically it's not because something is constitutional, that does not mean that it cannot be subject to review or to be, I got the quotation, I was looking for the case, Surat versus Attorney General. I had to look at another case which quoted it, which quoted that, that judgment that the current Attorney General spoke to in his winding up on the debate, which was really good. He said, you have to right a wrong, and it was a wrong. I mean, forget about it. You didn't know what to say. What are you going to say? What in heaven's are you going to say? So anyone who abstained from voting on that, I have to question that. Because there's no way you can say that was right. I don't care if you tell me there's been, even if there was, which I'm not saying there may not have been that, I am saying he created a trigger for the amendment, because no one who when that act was implemented in 1962 could have ever foreseen that the act would have been used in the way it was. And you cannot say to the national community that you are a spectator. You had to have actively participated in what arose. And so therefore, for that reason alone, I think it is reprehensible. I think you should, if you felt it was right, you should have come in the parliament and tell them why. What you did was the interest of the people, because that's what you say you're doing. Come and defend your position. Because if you don't do it, you're behaving, I don't know, you feel the rest of your colleagues won't go to support you, which they didn't, by abstaining. Couldn't bring themselves to say no. But anybody who abstained and bought into the argument and did that because it looked vindictive by people, what are you doing there? What are you doing there? That's what I want to do. So I'm finished with that. I was looking for the quotation from the case of Omar Maraj versus the Attorney General, where the Surat case was a paragraph 58, which is what the Attorney General alluded to when he was saying, just because something is the Constitution says is okay, doesn't make it okay. And that's exactly what it is. And I don't think, let him, why he's so quiet? Defend your position. If you're willing to take it, talk out. Defend yourself, defend yourself.
And we have to take a break, but just before we do, I'll say this. It's funny, they abstain, and usually abstain is when you want to take like a middle of the road, I don't want to commit. But ironically, I actually do think I have less respect for abstaining than for outright voting against it and backing up the position that you have out in the public. Because you're saying, I don't want to put my no on record, but then you're abstaining. So what does that mean? It basically, on the surface level, you're indicating I'm not even that confident in my own arguments, right?
That's what they wanted to say. But maybe that's deliberate, because they wanted to telegraph to the national community, listen, we are the opposition. He is one of our colleagues as a member of parliament. He was a former prime minister. Yes, we have our arguments, and yes, we think what he did was despicable, but for the public record, we cannot be seen to be voting against him.
I understand that.
Because that would have been a bacchanal.
But no, well, I'm not saying we have to vote against him.
Right.
Right.
But it's him.
You're defending him publicly to the press, so shouldn't you vote against the amendment and put that on record? Put your money where your mouth is. Otherwise, you only like to gamble when it's the people's money, when it's the people's credibility, when it's the people's capital, but not with your own. That's what it says me. Now, there might be other reasons. We ain't going to go into that. There might be other reasons, but I'm just going to go with the surface. And the surface is you can't even commit to your own side. How am I supposed to take you seriously when you say you're ready to commit to the rest of us, for the good of us all? You can't even commit for the good of yourselves. We have to take a break. When we come back, we'll open the phone lines. So what time we have left, stay tuned. This is Talking About NWA Essential. Michael Small, Karen Essential. We'll be right back after this.
Low energy? Heart concerns? Migraines slowing you down? It's time to take control of your health. Join Wellness Unlocked, the series that brings expert advice and real solutions for a healthier you. In our latest episode, learn how Jameson CoQ10 can help support heart health, boost energy, and even reduce migraines. Get the science, the stories, and the steps to power up your health with CoQ10. Don't miss Wellness Unlocked. Watch now on WESN and start your wellness journey today.
There are limitations in all healthcare sectors, not just this country, where the numbers will surpass the amount of doctors and nurses to provide that quality care. We're talking about holding a patient's hand, giving them the support, the emotional support that they need, advice. That gap, you are providing that pivotal gap, so that really makes you stand out from all other NGOs as far as my experience goes.
Yes, I actually go into the homes also of the patient.
And we're back here on WSN. This is Talking Point, and I'll just say this. Any man who has to say, I am the king is no true king. That's why I and I don't make sense. Anyway, that's...
Who said I am the king?
It's an analogy.
Oh, okay.
It's basically if I have to sing my own praises, am I worthy of my own praises?
Self-praise, recommendation.
There we go. Now, with that said, we have our first caller, Digger Martin, on the line, of course. The man that likes to stir the pot and get the conversation rolling. Mr. Digger Martin, good morning. Caller, you on here.
Good morning, Sean, and a very good morning to former Finance Minister Karen Nunes. Sure. A couple of quick issues. Listening to the debate on the pension bill was a learning exercise for me. Law 101. You had two seasoned lawyers, S.C. Jeremy and a seasoned lawyer, Daryl Alaha, who was lecturing to a junior Johnny Lately, come S.C. and a couple of them. A couple of things. One of in the 1969 legislation, somebody, Jeffrey Stolmeyer, independent senator, and I commented independent senator in a while, basically raised the issue of a one-day prime minister. And what happened? He basically voted without that change. The only one who didn't vote for it, because he wanted some clarification within that, was Clive Spencer. So he had people who were smarter than some of the people now, quite back in 1969, thinking about this. The other issue, if his word is salt, this is another recently minted SC. The former Prime Minister, take it to court. Go fund me. It mightn't be your money, and take it to court. Let us see what happens in a true case. Fight it. I mean to say, when the opposition was in opposition, now there is the government, any issue they thought was public interest, they said it was activists and all kind of, but they take it right up to the very top. Now I want to talk about independent senators. I am disgusted with the choice of them and how they're behaving. Two in particular who should have not come back because they've shown some previous questionable action and bias. One is a SC, and he had the issue with bringing judges, appeal court judges, into the debate in Parliament. Two presidents has done nothing about it. The former president, Weeks, and this president knows that. And the Chief Justice didn't make an inquiry to find out if he was telling the truth or the judges was basically getting into politics. And to bring back that, I want to use it in quotes, tainted independent or presidential senator back. You're creating mischief before it actually starts because there is friction there already. And then the other person who should not be there at all, because there was a controversy when the current Prime Minister was addressing the Diwali Nagar, there was a blackout. And they made all sort of excuse that is a failure this and a failure that. But deep down we knew that they basically did that for her basic thing that will be a national media thing. So that person who is currently still chairman of NCI should not have been thing because he's coming tainted and he's coming with a perceived bias. It might be true, false, or indifferent. But those two should have not been. And then a couple of them, most of them, I think is in the Tyranny Authority. They voted for the amendment. They say yes. And then when the real thing comes to close it off and pass it, they voted against it. So they give you a twisted tongue. So that alone tells me they come with a perceived bias with to basically, how do I say, oppose. I go and have a nice evening. And I think they have sunk the St. Andrews West former PMM. I think his political career is damaged. He can't come back. The own party doesn't want him, the country doesn't want him, and he doesn't believe in his own self if he doesn't fight the case. I'll go and have a
Stuart Young. Okay.
Well, Stuart Young, that's right. He may fight it, you know. You don't know. It's early days yet.
Well, this is the thing. I think if he doesn't fight it, right, Because if he doesn't, then it indicates he knows he doesn't have a leg to stand on. But if that's true, then all of this spirited bacchanal talk, to me, while it might cement your base and get your base behind you, that base, as much as the opposition leader is appealing for the base to come back, right now, I think it's a fair assumption to say it's probably shrinking. And you're pushing away and you're angering everybody else that isn't the base, which could be as low as 7,000, given the voter turnout. And everybody else that's not your base includes the non-UNC supporters. So it's not just people who are biased against you. It's the moderates in the middle who you should be competing for politically all the time, not just every election cycle. But anyway, we have a caller, St. James, I think, on the line. Good morning, caller. You on here?
Yes, good morning, Karen, Sean. I don't know if you all could sort of give me some insight into some stuff here. How does the president go about selecting an independent senator? Does he or she solicit organizations, individuals, or do they go through a private list? Does the president assess the contribution of these senators to ascertain who should be retained or released, or is it based on public outcry? As one. Sean, to you, I see that one of your ex-female co-hosts is now a PNM senator. Mm-hmm. I recall that some time ago she did indicate that she has no desire to get involved in active politics. That says a lot. Bye.
Well, I'll say this. I don't think everybody who becomes a senator is active in politics. As far as I'm aware, I don't think she was campaigning that much for the PNM. And I can't speak to why she was selected, but there are many senators who they're members of the party, but to say that they're active politicians, it's not quite the same. Farisawari and Foster Cummings are active politicians. They were in cabinet in the last go-round. They went up for elections. They were campaigning. Also, I don't think she speaks publicly outside of parliamentary debates, right? So I'm not saying she's not an active politician. I'm just saying I won't put her on the same level as others. So now we get into subjectivity, right? I do respect her, and I do wish her well, and I do hope that she could be an injection of some sanity into the darkness, right? Of our political landscape in general.
Just one thing, just quickly. I think the current opposition may have some kind of foothold now with the CPEP issue. I think that is going to be a rallying call. So let's not dismiss the call, come home, not with Stuart Young, but come home with CPEP. Okay, go ahead.
I mean, to be fair, and I said it, Minister Parrat, that is one interesting unforced error you just did in the last 36 hours, give or take. We have a call on the line. Good morning, caller, on here.
Yeah, good morning. Tell you what. You know, listening to the debates and me as a non-educated person, my stomach has been turned up. Because when you hear learned people with this sort of behavior and thinking, and you expect, so then you telling me now, I hire a guy to work for me for 1 or 2 days, and he did not meet my standard, and I fire him. I had to pay him pension. You understand me? It's something like that you're telling me. And if that is going on upstairs, what they leave to go on downstairs? Another thing I want to touch. I hope that when CPEP contract go out, they don't go out to no old people who retired. We say when they started, you will know, Mr. Something, that when Mr. Manning started, this was for young people, was to build themselves, get a trade and all this. And I hope that they're given to young people who in the 40 age group to start the business and whatever business ideas. But the failure that later on that the people was not going to classes, because my friend who was there, she went to classes. She went and get her school even certificate and whatever it is was, and she take, right? Well, it was close and she retired. She had died, right? She got blood and sick and she had died from cancer. But she started and she went down a journey. But the other people went. And I remember that CPEP used to have a toilet on a van. And most of people I know who was in CPEP then open business, who open bar and restaurant, who open whatever it is. But they open something. But this section here, all they're doing is, they come in, they're not fixing the patch in the road. They're not decorating the place how it was going on. Like it had a competition used to go on in areas. Because when I go south, I see them people and them, they plant garden and in different areas. They have people who plant flowers, who do different things. And when you're passing, you feel a sense of pride. When you drive down the bus route and you're seeing this and you're seeing that, walking down. When I walk down Santa Cruz and I see things paint up, little thing was looking like things clean up, and nice little trees, a little bench you could have sit down and relax yourself. You know, and you had a sense of pride at CPEP, but now what goes on?
That's true.
And this is your thing.
I think they've gone about it the wrong way. I think to what you said, yes, and I do agree with you, what you were saying, but it's a bigger issue and we do have the time to discuss it. But I do think that the way that it was gone about, you're hurting too many people. You're hurting too many people. The way you went about it is not the right way, and it has overtones of all kinds of things that I don't know if that was a right move to make. And what you need to do is fix it from inside. It's just it has a bad look, really, really bad look.
We have Sanford on the line. Caller, good morning. You're on the air. We'll respond to some of the other things that we haven't responded to yet, but we'll take the call first. Good morning, caller.
Yeah, good morning, Sean. Good morning, Karen. Not necessarily in that order. because, you know, when I see a pretty lady, I lost my words and that. So let me try. I hear in Parliament some very educated persons talking about, you know, I want to know where they get the money from to pay that 10%, and the people that don't feeling already, everybody wants to know when they go get it. But you know something? These are the same fellas who say that the former petition, which is now heritage, is making plenty of profit. And they're making money. Nobody's talking about already the revenue coming from other than that. They're open and trying to convince me that the TTRA will be the only collection to pay everybody. Which I find my grandson, which is 3 years old, going to find problems to understand. Now, the other thing is, I just heard on the TV a person saying that TTRA wasn't designed to target the poor man or the small man. I beg to disagree. Not because I like the lady, but because that if that is the case, why did you in the first place bring a property tax and target the same poor people and middle class, where you leave out the fellas with all the big expensive building rent and all that about? You understand? So that is why I have a problem trying to understand either the logic or whether they deliberately create these idiotic things so we could have debates on all them things, you know, and forget the real issues, which is you have people who know struggling. People have real difficulties, you know, real social difficulties, and that's a bigger problem. I don't want to know what they do in Parliament because they could do it anyway. I can't convince them otherwise. They could just put my pressure up. But you see, I have one consolation. I can look at the TV there and the pressure will go out. Thank you very much.
Okay, to start with your thing, I could only comment on that because we don't have the time. But regards to the TTRA, I mean, it's a fact. If you are working, for many people, if you look at CSO, they give you the breakdown. I don't do it in percentage, but they give you the breakdown of persons working for monthly salary starting, I think, at $500. I think that's where the starting point is. So if you look at that, you will see how many people are working for $10,000. And that's why am I using 10,000? Because 7,500 you don't pay tax. And then the 3,500, 2,500 could be for mortgage, if you have a mortgage on your house, if you are paying school, for your children at university. There are many ways in which you can get tax relief. So I'm telling you that those persons, and that's the majority of our citizens, do not fall into the Revenue Authority in terms of tax evasion. And even if some of them do, which is highly, like let's say self-employed and they're hiding that they have a hairdressing place, so they have this place and they're making $20,000 and they're not paying it. That's what the Revenue Authority would have dealt with also. But the vast majority has to be the business community and those who are high income. That has to be it, because the FIU of Trinidad and Tobago just published suspicious transaction. Who you think it is? The man working for $5,000 a month, 6.8 billion or something of that nature of suspicious transactions. Who you think it is involved? Please, don't try to defend something that, I mean, if you're making a point, make a point that you can say, well, 70% of the people working for X amount, and therefore they're affected. They're not affected. And that is a way, finally on that, is, we have income inequality in this country, very bad, really a big issue. So if you can right a wrong by letting those persons who fall into those tax brackets pay their right amount of tax, maybe they can use that money to get you better schools, better hospitals, better everything, and benefit you and me, or not, well, let me not use me, because they'll come after me. So benefit the persons of Trinidad and Tobago in a way that they are being deprived, not only in that way, but in foreign exchange, which is a different issue. But that's what I have to say on that matter.
On that premise, caller, because your premise was, well, the property tax was not going after the business owners, it was going after, the burden was more on the average citizen to the poor citizen, right? Now, okay, yes, the property tax as the current iteration did not go to commercial and industrial yet. That's and true. We don't know how long it would have taken to get there, to be fair to your argument. But you're basically saying, look at this legislation that government did, and then that motivation carries over to another legislation that they did. Now, I could take that logic and apply it to the TTRA from a different point of view. If repealing the TTRA was all about protecting the low-income brackets of society, true, right? And we want to say, well, you look at one piece of legislation or one policy decision by a government, and you could apply it to another policy decision or legislation. Well, then the manner of which the government did what it did to the CPEP workers is very inconsistent with that. So then now, I'm looking at what they did to the CPEP workers and how they hung them out to dry. And then a day later, it's like, no, we'll give you 1 month severance. You didn't say that up front, though. I wonder why. By your argument, then, it is reasonable for me to say, I don't necessarily think the TTRA repealing it was to the benefit of the poor workers, because they've shown that they're willing to do things that on the surface is not to the benefit of the lower income people of the country. And I agree to some extent with reducing the public sector labor force, but like I said, similar to the situation with the commissioner, just because you want to do a thing, you still have to be careful with how you do that thing, as Karen pointed out, how you do it. So I don't like that logic where, well, they showed in this case, this is their motivation, so in this other case, it has to be the same motivation.
And he's wrong about that too, but we don't have time to deal with that. So I don't want to go on deal with that, but
I just want to say, with regards to the independent senators, two things. One, it's at the discretion of the president. So basically, for one understand, it is literally just whatever the president wants to do, for the most part, right? How they make the determination, I do suspect
I know one example.
Based on,
I can give you one example.
Yeah.
When Dana, who was a very good friend of mine actually, became a president, what she did a lot of was writing, and it came to the attention of the president.
Right.
So when you see someone writing and being independent instead of giving vocal, but also being balanced in their
right, they're not biased on any.
Apparently so. That's someone who you say, that would make a good independent senator. So I think there are a lot of factors that come into play, and I think it is also how they present themselves in the public domain as being balanced in their thinking and so on. And also, of course, there are other considerations that we don't need to go into.
No, I will just say this. I'm not going to speak to the motivations and intent of the independent senators that the caller called up. I will just say this. At least in one case, it's not about what he intends or what he thinks or what he means. It's how his actions are perceived. And I could understand how his actions are perceived to be biased and perceived to be not independent. And it would behoove him to examine his past decisions and try to determine, right? Not that we're not judging him with regards to his intentions, but just like, look, you could come across as not being independent. And you need to understand that. So in the future, not saying you need to change how you make your decisions, but you need to change how you communicate those decisions so you don't continue to come across as being biased. Because it kind of goes counter to what you just said. For an independent senator to have to show that they are not biased, it's a hell of a thing when an independent senator is perceived by enough of the population to be biased.
No, I have to say, in the transparency, he is a very, very good friend of mine. I have to say that, because he is not just someone I know, but someone that I like a lot, and I have a lot of respect for. And so I just have to put that on the table. So that's it. But behoove, you got me with the word behoove. When you said that word behoove, I said, what? Where did that word come out from? That looks like a word that brings from the last century, way back in the last century. Anyhow, next
Every
week.
now and then, right, next week, yes.
Yes, I want to commit to that because I was really so incensed about it that I nearly rang post Sean on Monday, but I did not. I restrained myself.
Yes.
And that is on the pharmaceutical industry and the rule of the Fair Trading Act and the role of those commissioners who can act on their own in regard to the pharmaceutical business. And we need, I wish, we need as a country, as citizens, to take a position on that. It cannot be right. It cannot be right. But I will speak to it next week. And I think that the commission has the power under the act to act on its own. And this is a scandalous situation. And I've read enough of reports that show that, and then to come, I just have to say this, to come and read in one of the newspapers talking about people buying from the suitcase traders and buying drugs and non-good. You know why they're doing that? Because they can't afford it. People, drugs are not something like a car. You can take a taxi, you know. But when it comes to taking medication, right, you have no choice but to take it, you know. That's a life and death situation, you know. And to allow that market to be controlled by one group, as much as 70 to 75% of this thing, and to have that, and that former prime minister to say nothing wrong with the rich getting richer. No wonder he could say something like that. And that's why you're not there today. One of the reasons.
But this is why we have the good lady. This is why she is the good lady of talking about food. So we will have that conversation next week. It is something that I mentioned briefly because I don't know everything about everything. I know a little bit about maybe a few things, but I did identify this as an area of concern, and hopefully Karen, with her infinite expertise as a legal mind and a former government minister who is very good at breaking down the technical aspects,
I break down
right?
Things,
and I guess you could say this is where, hey, it's good to have that teaching experience, right?
It's true.
And by all accounts, by all metrics that matter to me, she never taught me. I'm not a lawyer, but she probably was one of the better lecturers that we've ever produced. But with that said, 3 books and no multiple editions. I was going to say no multiple editions of the books. What, one revision, 1 second edition, I think, out of the 3.
They asked me to do more, but that's because they want you to update it. But
they want you to update it, and so that they can make more money off of it, and the secondary market is made obsolete. But Karen doesn't do that.
For sure.
Now, with that said, folks, the good lady and I, we'll have that conversation next week. In the meantime, have a good day, stay safe, remember your allegiance to the Republic and to each other, and never forget, it's nice to be nice, so we can have constructive conversations and not do what one of the callers said happens in Parliament, you know, for all of the learned people. Hopefully, someday, as a society, we will rise above all of that. But until then, keep up the good fight. We'll see each other tomorrow. Bye-bye.
WESN.
My name is Dr. Stephen Carroll, the CEO at Community Hospital of Seventh-day Adventist, and we are committed to making good private health care affordable.
For all your medical needs, including dental, radiology, laparoscopy, behavioral and mental health, along with many other services, contact us for more information at 235-5479.
Community Hospital of Seventh-day Adventist,
where good private health care is affordable.
Low energy? Heart concerns? Migraines slowing you down? It's time to take control of your health. Join Wellness